Tony, thank you. Okay, shut up.
Welcome to
Brisco.
Stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I will be Bradshaw, and that would be your Chickasaw native, your Chickasaw Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we have got episode 4 of the Welch Dynasty, possibly the greatest wrestling family in wrestling history. If not, it's certainly in the debate, which is quite incredible, led by the great Roy Welch we've been talking about. And we got wrestling's greatest historian, our friend, Mr. Tony Richards. Tony, welcome to part 4.
Yes, we're excited about today. We're going to cover some really good stuff about the Welch family and about their expansion, and we're going to cover the end of the 50s and up into the 60s. So it should be a great show today.
Yeah, Tony, man, it's been fantastic. We're hitting today's pre-TV. Days when Layfield would say days when Brisco was breaking into business pre-TV.
That's right.
All the way up to where we're at now. But each step along the way, we find out why all these foolers and and people have become such leaders in our business there. But they keep spawning off, and building territories. It's unbelievable that the talent that they develop too in Tennessee. We go through that list with you every week, sometimes on a pre-show, and it just amazes me. And I look back, man, Jesse James, guy I shared the ring with, Spud Monroe, Now we're talking about Trent Phillips. You sent me a deal with Trent Phillips the other day. Trent Phillips was a great mentor of mine, but I just get so ingrained in these storylines about guys that I worked in the ring with, shared the ring with, but really didn't know their background, how they come out. I really didn't know they were such tough asses. I always heard the rumors, but now we got evidence to back up that Roy Welch, man, he developed a dynasty there in the South.
He was the oldest of the children and the leader of the pack, so we say. And what's interesting is, I was thinking about it the other day, and what he started out with in the 30s was almost like the Flintstones, but when they got television, it was almost like they moved into the Jetsons,
Wow.
Good
analogy.
They had reaching so many people, and people we talked about on our last show, people seeing this stuff that happened in the arenas. They were seeing it in their living rooms for the first time, and it was just such a big impact, and it really, really put rocket fuel on the territory in the late 1950s once they got television, and they were masters at getting television in all their markets and setting up live studio shows and putting the network together and buying an airplane and having Lester fly people around. And so they were quite the business people. And I always like to start out with some things about Roy. When we first started in our first episode, I'm learning stuff as we go because I'm talking to family members and talking to different people. Now we got the names of the other 2 sisters in the family that we didn't have before, Lucy and Beulah. So it was Roy, Jack, Herb, Bonnie, Lester, Lucy, and Beulah. Those were the 7 kids of Big
Isn't Beulah just a Southern name?
Yeah.
And that sounds like most of Layfield's relatives.
That's right. I got 5 great uncles: Cotton, Doodle, Jester, and Bunk. Well, four was my grandfather, Thomas Earl.
That's it. Around here we'd have Billy Bob and Thomas Jack and all that kind of stuff. But
and I got Bo and Homer.
Those were the 7 kids of Bertie Welch and then Big Ed Welch in Oklahoma.
Big Ed Welch from Chalisaw, Oklahoma.
Yep, and they migrated through West Texas and then to Ohio and then down to Kentucky and Tennessee, and that's where Roy settled in Dyersburg. And not only was he in wrestling, but he took a lot of his wrestling money and reinvested it in buying farmland. He owned one of the biggest dairy farms in the South. And one of the things I heard about the dairy farm was, have you ever seen those big blue harvest store silos sit on fields where they put all their feed and silage in?
Oh,
and
yeah.
all that? They're huge, towering blue things. He had 8 of those.
Wow.
8 harvest store silos on his farm, and he was leasing out extra land because he was always adding to his cattle herd.
Now, Tony, he had about 1,000 head, right, for his Dairy farm. Okay, so I worked on a dairy farm growing up for my brother-in-law, and that is a ranching operation. I mean, that is,
Yeah.
there's a lot to this. Hey, we're running a dairy farm, yeah, but 1,000 head of cattle, that's a ranching operation also. I mean, that's a logistic nightmare that you have to put together.
Yeah, not only do you have to milk a large amount of those cows every single day, you got to feed them and take care of them, and you got to take care of the calves that are born, and you got to breed them, all that ranching stuff you're
Round
talking
them up
about.
3 times a year, rotate the cattle from field to
Give
field. It's
give them shots and
Yeah.
cut some of the bulls and
Yeah. Cut some
all
of the
that
bulls.
stuff.
Uh,
Roy had a nickname. We haven't talked about that yet, but Roy, from his days in wrestling in the 30s and the 40s, he had 2 cauliflower ears, and the boys always called him, and the friends always called him bag ears, because he
I
had
like it.
two cauliflower ears. And George Harris, Bunk Harris, who
Bach
grew
Harris,
up.
Teuton Harris.
Yep, he was from Caruthersville, Missouri, and grew up there around Dyersburg. Grew up with Buddy Fuller and Lester Welch, and he was about 7, and Buddy Fuller was about 8 when they first met. And he said they would draw somewhere between 200, and if they had a really good show in Dyersburg, they might draw 500 people at the high school gym. And he was on several of those shows that our friend Hot Gillum would run, because Hot Gillum promoted the shows with Sunset Carson, the cowboy movie star. He said they went to Corinth, Mississippi together, and what the Welches would do is they'd run a wrestling card, then they'd have a Sunset Carson show. And Carson would do shooting tricks and lasso demonstrations. It'd be a cowboy type thing, right?
Tony, tell me, Carson. Now he was a rip off of old Hopalong Cassidy, Roy Rogers
Yeah.
when the westerns on TV were really so hot and dynamite, right?
Yeah, the cowboy movies at the movie theater, and then later on television, the Tex Ritters and the Roy Rogers and those guys were the A
Was he a
stars.
singing cowboy too? Could he sing?
Well, Roy always teased him that he wasn't a real cowboy. And so they'd do these shooting tricks and these lasso demonstrations. Then they'd run everybody out of the building, switch the card around, have different matches with the same guys, and charge everybody to get back in, do another card, and then have another Sunset Carson show on the same day.
Tony, I always talk about, the fact that there's hardly anything new in wrestling, and there may be something here or there, but for the most part, nothing's new. Look at what they're doing now in a lot of these independents and different shows. They'll run a wrestling show, but they'll do something afterwards. They do a spoken word tour. Me and Mr. Briscoe
Yep.
have done one. Me and Ron Simmons have done one. The Hardys do the Hardy Party. And you think like, oh, that's so revolutionary. No, it's not. They were doing it 70 years ago, doing the
Yeah.
exact same thing that these guys are doing today. People are like, oh man, what's such a great idea to combo all this stuff.
Yeah, that's right. They sure were. They were pioneers in show business and wrestling together. And they would take these some of these stars that needed extra money. They'd run around on the wrestling tour. And we're going to talk a little bit later on about the relationship between wrestling and carnivals, where Sputnik Monroe came from, right?
Right.
Roy would tease Sunset Carson. He would tell him all the time, "You're not a real cowboy." And he'd just keep gigging him, he'd say, "This guy ain't a real cowboy. He's not a real cowboy. He's a movie cowboy. He's not a real cowboy." And of course, out on the farm with the dairy cows, he also had horses. Roy had horses. And he had this one wild stallion out there on his farm. So he told Carson, he goes, "You ain't a real cowboy. As a matter of fact, I got a horse you can't ride." And Carson would get mad and go, "The hell I can't. I used to break horses all the time back in wherever he was from." And so Sunset Carson was a pretty big dude. He's about 6'6". So Roy takes him out to the farm, brings the stallion out, ties up the stallion. He says, "Well, there you go, cowboy. You go ahead. Show me what a real cowboy you really are." So Carson takes the horse out, and of course he gets on the horse, and of course the horse throws him hard. And he gets right back up, gets back on the horse. And by the time he'd been thrown around about 6 or 7 times, he had 2 broken ribs. Roy said, "I see there. I told you. Well, now you got broken ribs. You might be a real cowboy now. I'm not quite sure." He just kept teasing. And he had to referee matches that night with the broken ribs after he tried to ride Roy's horse.
I broke 2 ribs in Europe one time for Otto Vance in an afternoon show, and I went to the doctor. The doctor was there, and he goes, "Hey, you got a couple broken ribs." So I tell Otto, I said, "Otto, I got a couple broken ribs." He goes, "Well, be careful tonight. You have a cage match." Really? There was like zero sympathy for me. You know,
Yeah.
guys back then were just different. Hey, and
You
I'll
know-
tell you another quick about carnivals. And this is a great topic. I'd love to bring up sometime with you, Tony, about carnivals and wrestling. So I'm in Europe one time working for Otto, and there's a carnival there, and I wanted to go back in the middle of the day and like see the animals and stuff. The elephants, they had a rhinoceros there and some stuff. They're real cool because we were part of the same campground, and they let me go back with the animals and look at them and all this stuff. So there's 2 guys standing beside me, and they're talking carny about me. And I'm sitting there I just start laughing because they had no idea. And so I answered them in carny. And they just looked at me. They weren't saying anything bad at all. They're saying what a big guy I am, that he's a wrestler and all this stuff. They were saying nothing. They just didn't want to talk with me, understand it. But they're talking carny just like we talk in wrestling. And I sat there and answered them, and they looked at me. I said, "Guys, where do you think we came from?"
That's hilarious. Bunk Harris also said, I read an interview with him. He said that he knew that when Roy was thinking about quitting the business back when the first guy died in the ring, and before Nashville really caught on, that all the guys, Roy, Herb, all them, they were going to barber school, and they were thinking about quitting the business to be barbers. But about that time, Nashville picked up, and Roy got Nashville, and that all started popping like we talked about in previous shows. But I never knew they were thinking about being barbers. But that's kind of interesting.
Guys always had a backup plan, right, Mr. Briscoe?
I had that plan B all the time.
Always, guys always had a plan.
You get in the car. You get in the car as a kid in the business, and those old timers, kid, what's your plan B? I don't have one, but I had one. I called them an extra plan because I was a college kid. I had an extra plan, not, and that was 10 years in the business and going. There I am, 50 years later, still talking wrestling.
That's right. Yeah.
So a couple of carryover notes from Nashville. November 17th, 1956 on WSIX, Saturday night, 9 o'clock. Southern
and WSIX was on Channel 8, right? That's one of the dumbest call signs I've ever heard for being on Channel 8. So WSIX was on Channel 8.
W6 was on 8. That's right.
Yeah.
And the wrestling show was on at 9. Southern TV titled, Jesse James won the title on the live TV show, one of the first TV titles that was in pro wrestling happened there in Nashville. I got to tell this story about the Christmas charity card in Nashville, where all the proceeds went to the Davidson County Sheriff's Fund for holiday baskets for the needy, because Mr. Briscoe's favorite female wrestler is on there, Vern Bottoms, and also another
the greatest
female,
name ever.
And then also on that, they had a girls wrestle royal, and the winner, of course, determined the matches. The first person out wrestled the second person out. And the first match was Penny Banner and Joan Mullinex. And this is about the time that it's just after Roy and Nick buy Memphis. And so that exposes Penny Banner to the biggest wrestling fan in Memphis, which is Elvis Presley.
Well, I read that and I'd heard that story, but you backed it up. I never figured it was true, but now we're getting back up on it.
She sure did. She dated Elvis there for several months. Yeah.
She married Johnny Weaver in Carolina.
Biggest babyface on the coast.
Yeah.
She sure did. And so that was kind of interesting that Elvis was involved in wrestling in a lot of different ways. But
like you said before, the Fullers drove the Wilsons drove those pink Cadillacs, and then of course Elvis's favorite choice of a car color was pink.
Yeah, Roy was Nick was pink and Roy's was white, but they bought a new Cadillac every single year.
So Elvis was kind of her rat.
Riz rat, John.
That's right, Rizat. That's right. Elvis was a Rizat. That's right.
Couple other things there in Nashville before we move to the Gulf Coast is that Ray Stevens comes in, has a big run there in Nashville. Of course, on television. Freddie Blassie's in wrestling. Also, the second Ginger the Wrestling Bear makes the debut on the Christmas show, December 25th, 1957, in Nashville. Zebra Kid does the job for Ginger the Wrestling Bear. And they ran the Christmas show, and all kids under 12 got in free. And it didn't matter if they were accompanied by an adult or not. If they were under 12.
I like that because most of the newspaper had accompanied by parents, it's special prize. But this is, 12-year-old, drop your kids off and we'll take care of them for 3 hours. So.
And
That's cool.
Clearly says that in the newspaper, with or without parents. So if you're under 12, you get in the Christmas show for nothing. So
what a nightmare that had to be.
Pretty wild.
It was one of those John Cena crowds, the crowd are.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a lot about Buddy Fuller today, Roy Welch's son, who Roy didn't really want him to be in the business. So that's why Buddy got into the wrestling business a little later in life.
And that's strange too, because in a previous episode, Tony, we discussed how much Roy wanted his family to be around him being in the business. But I guess his oldest son, he just wanted, it was a better life for you out there, boy. Don't be around.
Yeah, his only son. He had a son and a daughter. Of course, his daughter married somebody in the business. And, he seemed like it was okay for the brothers to all come in and for the nieces and the nephews and everybody and the in-laws and all that. But he didn't want Buddy in the business. He wanted Buddy to go out and learn a trade. And
I've never known too many people that had sons, their first sons, that they wanted to get in the business. So,
So he became a really good welder. He went to Chicago and worked on construction projects there, and developed into a master welder. And so he came back to Tennessee in the early 50s, and he was convinced by Roy that he should get into business. So he started at Dyersburg, like all the family members did. He worked around the Tennessee territory, and he sent him over to Johnson City, Tennessee, to work over there with Mickey Barnes for a while. And I think he was in Johnson City for, a year, a little bit more than that. And then Roy had all the state of Alabama. And so he decided he was wanting to open up a second booking office all the way down in the bottom of Alabama on the Gulf Coast in Mobile, Alabama. So he sent Speedy Hatfield down there, which married Roy's sister, Bonnie Welch. And of course, they had 3 sons that were just about getting into the business there in the 50s. They all worked around Nashville in the Tennessee territory. Lee Fields, Bobby Fields, and Don Fields. So we'll start with Lee Fields, because Lee was a huge baby face. Everybody calls Ron Fuller the Tennessee Stud, right? And some people have called Robert the Tennessee Stud. But Lee Fields' actual nickname was Stud. They called him Stud Fields all the time. And his big move was the Bulldog Headlock. And he often wrestled in a tag team with Bobby Fields. And Bobby was the flyer he did all the high spots in the team. But Lee Fields would eventually become the biggest baby face ever in the Gulf Coast territory.
Wow.
Don Fields.
How long was he on top there?
All through the 50s, 60s, and early 70s.
Wow. So he had a 20-year run.
Yeah. And toward the end of there, from the mid 60s to the early 70s, he did what Buddy did that we're going to talk about down in Gulf Coast. He pretty much was the promoter. But every now and then he'd come out and do a program, and that's how he kept himself on top for so long. Don Fields.
Now, did he have to have a front person and get an exemption because you couldn't be both, right?
That's right. And that's going to figure into today's story about the Gulf Coast, because Speedy Hatfield would be the referee or the promoter. Rocky McGuire, who's another guy that came out of Tennessee that was sent down to help, he will be the front promoter.
Tony, what was the mindset of having that separate? I understand, if it's supposed to be a shoot, but I don't know, why was it important that you have a difference between promoter and wrestler, and you could not be in both categories?
I think it's just a gimmick by the athletic commission, because they wanted to have that separate, and they that's just the way they wanted it. And the athletic commission was the ones that were giving out the licenses, so you kind of had to go along with them. And it varied from state to state. It wasn't the same in every state.
Exactly. Well, have you in your research, Tony, found any shady dealings with the athletic commission, because they are kind of shady at times, but they had to be willing to work with the Welches, because they were so easily, okay, guys, I want to work this program, I want to be a wrestler for a while, with his name, and then. So have you found any corruption going on?
Man, that's going to be a big story in episode 5.
All
Good.
right.
Good. Because I hate
we love corruption.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. We're going to have some Knoxville. We're going to have some Memphis. We're going to have some stuff coming up in episode 5. Don feels he broke in the 50s like Bobby and Lee, and he was a tag team guy too, held a lot of tag team titles. Unfortunately, in 1963, his active career ended because he was in a really bad car accident in South Alabama. The guy was on the other side of the road, was drunk, and hit him head on. Speedy Hatfield and Lee were in the car behind him and saw the whole thing, but he got injured to the point he couldn't come back and wrestle. Another car accident that happened down in the Tennessee territory at about this time, August 22nd, 1950.
And by the way, just got a picture up for people to see. That's Layfield, right?
Yes.
Okay, just for people to see. That's the biggest baby face on the Gulf Coast for about 20 years, 50s, 60s, and early 70s.
Yep.
He resembles Danny Hodge a lot in that photo.
Yeah, he does. He does very much.
Mars Bennett passed away about 10 miles west of Nashville. She got hit by a tractor trailer rig head on. Belle Starr and Larry Clark were with her. They were injured. They were all going to Greenville, Tennessee. The girls were in a tag team match that night. And I tell you, Mars Bennett was a beautiful lady. She was only 35 years old, and she was a very pretty lady, and unfortunately passed away very early in her career. There were a lot of car accidents during this time.
What do you think? I was going to ask you, why do you think there were so many car accidents? And it was the roads, I mean, they're mountainous roads and no interstate probably at that time. So
well, when your brother was there, a boulder fell on his car.
A boulder fell off, hit the damn car.
Where did a boulder hit him? You told me the story back there.
Between Nashville and Knoxville?
Outside of Nashville. He was on his way to.
Wow. And there's Mars Bennett for those. Right there.
I love their old outfits like that too.
Yeah. And how old was she when she passed away?
35.
Wow.
Yeah. She was a star for sure, and would have been a bigger star. So Buddy goes down to Mobile, and 1956, and he separates the Gulf Coast territory from the rest of the Tennessee territory. It's a large geographical area, so Roy thinks we need to have a separate office down there, another central location for the boys to travel out of. And the Gulf Coast territory was probably one of those most desirable short trip territories ever in wrestling. From Pensacola, Florida, over to Hattiesburg, Mississippi was the longest trip that you'd make. So he started bringing the Mississippi towns in. He ran Alabama. He ran Mobile, Dothan, Montgomery, Alabama. In Mississippi, he brought Jackson, Mississippi in because Roy had bought the whole state of Mississippi in 1955. So he had Biloxi, Gulfport, Hattiesburg, and Laurel all in his loop. So essentially the lower and middle parts of the state of Mississippi. That middle part of Mississippi is eventually going to go to Leroy McGurk. But at this early stage here of the Mobile territory, they're running all of the 2/3 of Mississippi and about half of Alabama, the southern half.
And Tony, how tall was Buddy Fuller? I mean, his two boys, Rob.
He's tall. He's tall.
Ron and Ron
6'5", 6'6".
And there's a picture. Just that's Buddy Fuller there.
Yeah, but Buddy was a real tall guy, John. He's about
just like his sons.
Yeah, like his sons. Yeah. Hey, Tony, we're talking Mississippi. What was going on in Louisiana? I mean, was it was it part of their dynasty?
Roy was sending talent there. He was booking for all the promoters in Louisiana. He was sending people to
Who were
Louisiana
the
to work.
promoters in Louisiana?
Oh my gosh, let's see. I'd have to think about that for a second. There were a couple of female promoters there.
Wow.
Yeah, Jerry,
Okay,
they're not.
that's okay.
They're not
That's okay.
coming to
I was
mind.
just
Um,
because I know when I was coming up in the business, Leroy wanted to send me down there because they didn't want to beat their baby face every night. In
Yeah.
Oklahoma, that was an old tradition. And right as you break in, you're from that area, you get beat every night for some reason. So he didn't want to do that. He wanted me to get experience, so he sent me down to Louisiana, and that's where I ran into the Goldens and Calkins and people like that.
Was it a
Yeah.
separate territory, Jerry? Or was it just a partner?
No, Leroy just bought it from I think George Calkin or whatever.
yeah, yeah. So just like he'd seen Roy do, he starts surrounding himself with guys he can trust down there. So he takes Charlie Carr down there, Rocky McGuire down there. He takes his uncle Virgil Hatfield down there, and Lee and Bobby and Don moved down to Mobile, Alabama. And so Buddy buys a farm and ranch in Loxley, Alabama. Charlie Carr essentially moves in and lives with them on the ranch. Talk about Charlie Carr a little bit, and you met him too, Jerry, right?
Yes, sir. Big guy. I didn't realize he was that tall, but he was a big guy.
So he was a boxer early on in his career, and then he became a wrestler and a trainer, and occasional actor even. He wasn't a Luthez or a Gorgeous George, but I mean, he made a lot of contributions to the sport, and he was in the South quite a bit. He had a passion for combat sports, so he probably would have been a guy who could have been in MMA if MMA existed back then.
And I'm sure that was his attraction to Roy Welch too.
Yeah, shooters, right? He broke in the 30s, where things were evolving and most things were going from shoot to worked. So him and guys like Pat Malone, Sailor Moran, Roy Welch, they all got trained by Dutch Mantell in West Texas. And so Charlie moved down to Mobile, and he's really kind of the trainer. It wasn't really called that back then, but he was the guy that broke guys in, essentially. And
okay,
so,
you mentioned Dutch Savage again. This is the original Dutch Savage.
Dutch Mantell.
Dutch Mantell.
Yeah,
Dutch Mantell. Yeah, I wonder why he was never a bigger part of that territory. His relationship with Roy.
Who wasn't?
Mantell.
Oh,
Mantell.
Dutch. Oh, I just think he was occupied. He was doing
probably past his prime too. Then.
Yeah, sure. He died in 1941. So, by the time Roy hit Nashville and really started expanding, Dutch was really sick and passed away. So the timelines didn't really fit for Dutch to be involved. But he was kind of building his own little territory there in West Texas, based out of Amarillo.
Yeah, this is Dutch Mantell, right?
That's him.
Oh, what a
wow.
looker.
He's as bad looking as our Dutch Mantell.
That's him.
No wonder our Dutch Mantell grew hair all over him.
Yeah, no wonder he's got that Yosemite Sound mustache there.
That's right.
And just another little add in to Dutch Mantell's resume, as it is in Steve Johnson's Jim Londos book. He had a big hand in Jim Londos's training.
Dutch was a badass, right? I mean, I'm talking about the original. Our Dutch may be a badass too, but the original Dutch was a badass, right?
He really was, man. And he was the guy that was going to make you earn it and make sure you were worthy of being in the business.
Wow, those old guys like that, they were all over the place back in those days.
Charlie Carr was one of those people. And
Charlie was one of them, man.
He lost his wife in a car accident, and they had driven off a ledge or something, and she passed away. And he was never really the same after that. And so there were stories that he would go downtown in Mobile and check into a hotel, and he'd get a room. Now he's living with Buddy Fuller and the Fuller boys out on the ranch at Loxley when Ron and Robert are just kids. And Charlie Carr would leave the ranch and go get a hotel room, lock himself in there, and just get crazy drunk and just start killing the room, start trashing the room like Joe Walsh or something,
Just by himself.
Yeah, just by himself. And so Buddy would have to go down there because nobody could get him out of the room. Nobody could get him out of there. Nobody could talk to him. He was in there just like a Tasmanian devil, just tearing up the room.
Wow.
And Buddy'd have to go down there and stand outside the door and talk him out of the room and get him out of there and take him back to the ranch. You guys had the guy on that wrote the book about Plowboy Frazier. And he was talking about Plowboy Frazier breaking in, but he couldn't think of the guy that he broke in with. Well, he broke in with Charlie Carr because when he came down and he wanted to get in the business, Buddy goes, well, just pick out guy that you want to think you can wrestle there. And he picked out Charlie, which is the guy who don't look like a wrestler, right? And then Charlie, broke his arm and battered up his face real good. And Plowboy came back, just like.
And there aren't any great pictures of Charlie on the net, but that's Charlie right there, right?
Yeah, that's
Charlie.
him. Yeah.
One of those tough old guys. They used to do that. I never saw it done, so I wasn't there. But they would pick the guy that the fan wanted to fight in Europe, and of course, you got Finley there. He's not a very big guy, and you got Gustav Smeasel, who would both of them would have killed the guy. But they go, I want the little guy. They'd pick Finley, and Finley just kill him.
Same deal.
That's how it always goes with the suitors. You get a guy like Charlie Carr out there. Well, you put some big guy like me standing next to him, stand there all being. I want the little guy. Yeah, that's not the guy you want.
And I think Charlie would wear his referee uniform. And Buddy would say, well, I tell you what, if you can beat my referee, then you can probably be in the business.
Eddie Graham, we had Masao Hattori. Masao Hattori was a little bitty Japanese guy. He was also a world-class amateur wrestler, Olympic level wrestler. He was sent down by Tadaki Hata, a friend of mine down to Eddie. So guys used to walk in. Eddie used to tell them, "I tell you what, guys, if you want business, if you can beat our little janitor over there, then we'll break you in." And Masao would go out there. I didn't care how big these guys are. He would have them running out the door in 5 minutes.
One of the things that Buddy did down in the Gulf Coast was he would, because he's got this welding skill and these construction skills and all that, he'd build his own buildings to have wrestling in. Well, that the territory owned the office owned the building in these different towns. And he even did that down in Griffin, Georgia. He had a building down there that was a building that they had wrestling in on Saturday night. But
I might be wrong, but Tallahassee Sports Center, I believe that's one of Buddy's buildings too. And I was so glad that Buddy got into that because Eddie copied everything that Buddy did. And of course, I was a stockholder, so when we'd build these buildings, I owned part of the damn building and property. I was really, really happy about that part of the business.
Would they sublet the buildings, I would assume, for other things?
Yeah, sure. It'd be another stream of revenue for them, and the office would own it. They'd get all the tax advantages of real estate and be able to take the depreciation. And so he's a businessman.
But then you also own concessions, and if you charge for or anything,
parking and concessions,
and you're paying rent.
That's where most of the money was made, John, was on concessions and parking.
Right, and you're paying the rent to yourself. So all that expense that would normally be going out stayed in the company because you own the building. And so it was some of the really smart things that he started doing down there in the Gulf Coast.
So Buddy Fuller was a chip off the old block from Roy. I mean, he was smart just like Roy, and he did things that was, he was expanding the empire.
Yeah. I mean, he was very well known for being able to make money, just about in anything that he did. The other thing he was known for by a lot of people that I either read an interview about or I talked to was that he was like a college football coach, like a Bear Bryant, that the guys would like do anything for him. Like they really wanted to work hard for him. He was a great motivator and a great team oriented guy. And he would tell them, we're all in this together. We got to work together to make this work. And they took this little thing that they carved out in Alabama and drew all these people to Ladd Stadium. They had 39 stadium cards there in Mobile at that ballpark. And so I just wanted to go through a couple. Hey,
Tony, real quick, how big was the ballpark? What did it seat?
Well, a little over 12,000.
Wow. So you had
Yeah.
39, 10,000 plus crowds.
Well, not that many. I mean, they would draw. I think the least amount they'd draw would be about 5,500, but they would draw some sellouts there at the stadium. The first show was on September 5th, 1956. And another guy they sent down there to help was Colonel Herb Langston. So Langston was a Roy lieutenant that got sent down there to help out too. They drew 6,674 people in a 15-round boxing match. Here's our guy we talked about. Layfield is in the main event, a 15-round boxing match with Frank Fazio, who was one of the original great Malenkos, and it ended in a no contest and double disqualification. Then on October 24th of 56, it was announced Buddy
That's got,
Fuller.
I'm going to cut you off. That's got to be
That's
tough.
all right. Cut
I mean,
me
to
off anytime.
work a boxing match for 15 rounds,
Yep.
15
that
rounds.
sucks.
Yeah, and both guys get DQ'd in the finish.
Oh,
So-
that's
so-
brutal.
Now, did they have a special referee for that? Was that
I think it was Speedy Hatfield.
Speedy Hatfield?
He was refereeing most of the matches now, who's Roy's brother-in-law, married Roy's sister. And he was the father of the Fields boys. Of course, nobody knew that because he didn't use the Fields name. He used his regular Hatfield name, but the boys worked as Fields. So they didn't really know there was a relation there. May 15th, 1957, Buddy Fuller's the promoter now. Layfield beat Freddie Blassie in the main event. So Blassie's in working with Lee as the babyface. May 22nd of 57, this is goes back to Roy buying a new Cadillac every year. So this is the first Cadillac tournament in the Gulf Coast Territory, May 22nd, 1957. Tournament final for the first Gulf Coast heavyweight champion and a brand new Cadillac. Layfield did the job for Eduardo Perez to win the Gulf Coast title in the Cadillac car. And so the attendance was listed as 10,568. But in the newspaper accounts and stadium officials said it was more like 12,000 people. So they had an overflow crowd in the stadium here within just a few weeks of building the territory. May 29th, 1957, crowds down a little bit to 4,227. Lee and Bobby Fields beat Freddie Blassie and Eduardo Perez. And then on June 5th, 1957, Buddy Fuller's the promoter, a boxing and wrestling match. Each man on each team wears boxing gloves. So you got one guy in the tag team that has boxing gloves on, and the other guy's a straight wrestler on each team. And Freddie Blassie and Eduardo Perez beat Lee and Bobby Fields in that main event.
That's just another example, Tony, where we've discussed before how the Fields and the Fullers were so generous with their talents and their ability. They didn't mind putting prospective good talent over. And I've noticed that all through our episodes here, that they're businessmen. They were not selfish in the ring. They were giving of their abilities there.
Yeah,
I think that's impressive as hell.
They always pick the right finish.
Yeah.
For the right person to go over. I'm saying,
And there's Eduardo.
There he is.
I was in the ring many times for that crazy guy.
Really?
I loved it. I loved it.
He looks crazy.
Yeah, he was good.
The big thing they used to do, Jerry, you remember when they have the boxing gloves, and you had this gimmick match with somebody, you'd have one set of gloves that was like these huge 30-ounce gloves, and you're going, and you go, I want those as the heel. And the crowd would always stick them on the baby face. They're like getting hit with fillers. They give you like the little bitty 4 ounces where you just kill the guy with them.
Yeah.
But it was always a work to try to get. You always try to get your opponent to have the real big boxing gloves because you weren't going to get hurt.
So now Buddy Fuller introduces his new heel, Bonnie Lee Butch Boyette. Bonnie Lee Butch Boyette is Mario Galento. Mario Galento. So he's raised in the South in Tennessee, and he was known as Big Bud growing up. He had to work a lot as a kid, and also he self-hypnotized himself.
I remember that. That was the thing. He could hypnotize a kid. Watch out.
Yeah. And so he got married to Marie in 1936. They had 3 children, Robert, Barbara, and Terry. You remember
I know Barbara well,
remember Barbara Galinto, right,
very
Jerry?
well. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he broke in here in the early 50s. And the guy that broke him in, of course, was Al Spider Galinto, who Spider Galinto was also a big heel for the Welches in Tennessee and in Alabama. And he's the guy that broke in that fella right there,
Yep,
Mario
Mario
What an
Galinto.
impressive
a
guy.
great heel.
Yep.
He had John. Look at that face. I mean, that's a face for a heel, right there.
Oh, yeah.
He looks like Keith Richards in the pirate movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he broke in the early 50s. And so he broke in as Butch Boyette, but quickly, when Spider Galinto got a hold of him, he said he drew a lot of inspiration from two-ton Tony Galinto, the boxer. And he'd seen Tony Galinto fight many times, and he typically took a big whipping. And so Galinto was famous for taking, a beating and taking a lot of whippings. So he debuts on television, and he starts taunting Buddy Fuller, because Buddy Fuller has not wrestled yet in the Gulf Coast territory. He's the promoter. And so he's on television, promoting the matches and talking about the matchups and all of that kind of stuff that a promoter would do on television. But Galinto starts throwing insults at him and starts taunting him and go, "Yeah, you hiding behind being a promoter. You're scared of us wrestlers. You're scared to get in a ring. You can't get in the ring because the state of Alabama tells you can't. But you really could if you wanted to. You just don't want to because you don't have the courage to hang with us wrestlers." And so he does that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so on June 19th, 1957, they have the big match. And this is an amazing card. You got the great Malenko and Bob Clay. You got Layfield and Lester Welch against Eduardo Perez and Pete Zarnoff. And you got Buddy Fuller and Mario Galinto, where the match is stopped after 20 minutes because of blood loss by both wrestlers, and the match is declared a draw.
And Tony, this is the famous picture from that match, right?
That's the one.
You can see the hard way up there. That's obviously the hard way, but the rest of it, we heard it from I guess Ron Fuller.
Yeah,
I think it was, and he told us that Mario says, "I'm going to take one shoot punch, and then the rest, work a lot of the rest." So there was that's where the eye came from. I mean,
that looks like more than one shoot punch there.
It looked like a bunch of shoot punches because he got him with the punch there, but he also hard weighed him up right there.
And that's where you would normally hard weigh somebody, wouldn't you, Jerry? Right above the eyebrow.
Well, they look for that little. There's a lump. If you touch your eyebrow, there's a little lump there. They always would take your hand and they pull it down and punch you right there on that little bone and split wide open.
Just a glancing blow.
Just a glance of blow. I mean, it didn't have to be hard or anything like that. Just a glance, and they kind of twist her little head. I mean, I was shown all this stuff too when I was coming in, but it was cool as hell. As a rookie coming out of college, where you couldn't do anything, now you get to fight a little bit, boy. Learn how to fight.
And this was the card where Buddy was given the special permission by the Alabama Boxing and Wrestling Commission to have this match. And he didn't. Normally, what he'd have to do is he'd have to name somebody else as the promoter so he could wrestle. But they let him get by with that. And a state athletic commissioner was actually there and was also involved with saying this can't go on. So there had to be.
They were in on the finish.
Yeah,
guarantee it. They were in on the finish.
that
right. I mean, they sat there. They allowed the match to happen. They know what the finish is going to be. Then they stop the finish at the 20-minute mark when it gets too wild. They were in on every bit of it, which I don't have a problem with. But
and those and obviously those hard ways played into the fact that it was going to be 20 minutes, right? Because you had to be bleeding that much for them to stop it at the 20-minute mark. So you had to really get the juice flowing. And according, look at that picture, they sure did. Now, then what happens is after they draw this 10,000, after they draw this 10,000 crowd at Ladd Stadium, the next thing that happens is this hot team that's doing this big business in Nashville comes down, and the Fargo brothers start coming in. Mm-hmm. So then he brings the Fargos in, starting July 29th of 1957. World Tag Team match, Fabulous Fargos, and they beat Buddy Lee and Bobby Fields. They draw almost 8,000 people to that card. And the Fargos work the territory almost every week after that. They draw anywhere from 7 to 6,000 to 10,000. On August 14th, 1957, Fabulous Fargos beat Lee and Bobby Fields by disqualifications. And afterwards, the Fields brothers stole the championship belts, but they drew over 10,000 for that card. The next week, on August 21st of 57, it's a singles match. Jackie Fargo beat Lee Fields. And then Mario Galinto beat the Southern Junior Heavyweight Champion, Cyclone Anaya, to gain both titles. You had a title unification match. Now both titles are on Mario Galinto. And there's also a famous picture out there on the internet of Mario Galinto wearing 2 championship belts. And that's from this card here where they drew almost 9,000 people. Lee, Don, and Bobby Fields against the 3 Fargos, Jackie, Donnie, and Sonny Boy. They all had a 6-man tag on the main event. But what a card. Jackie Fargo and Lee Fields in the opening match. Then a title unification match, Mario Galinto and Cyclone Anaya, and then a 6-man with the Fields against the Fargos. I mean, they're cooking with gas right now.
They're loading that card up, man.
There's the picture.
Yep,
Yeah.
2 championship belts.
Yeah.
The Wild Rebel, Mario Galinto.
Yeah.
He now has.
The thing about it is, I mean, these guys are drawing 10,000 people regularly. I mean, this is a hell of a territory. This isn't like you're just running weekly shows and you're drawing 700-800 people. I mean, you're putting 10,000 people into arenas.
And they're doing that too, but on the Mobile nights, they're drawing the stadium. They're drawing 8 to 10,000 people.
Wow.
On the next card, they got Galinto and Lee Fields in a rematch, and then they go back to, and that's at Hartwell Field, which is another baseball field. That they drew about 5,000 or 6,000 to that, a little bit smaller arena. But then they go back to Ladd Stadium, April 2nd, 1958. Gulf Coast title, Mario Galinto versus Ray Stevens, ends in a no contest when Rocky McGuire stops the match because of blood loss by both wrestlers. And then in the main event, the Fabulous Fargos, Jackie and Donnie against Lester Welch and Buddy Fuller. Speedy Hatfield stopped the match and called it a draw in the 3rd fall. And again, Fuller had permission from the Alabama Commission to participate.
Now they stopped it because of blood again.
Yep.
So there were a lot of bloodbaths going on at that time.
I mean, Buddy, I mean, when you think about him being a motivator, which we'll really get into when we get to Memphis, he was telling these guys, hey, you're taking all these beatings and you're doing all that, but look at the money we're making. You know?
Really?
Then you got April 23rd, and this is interesting. This shows how there are certain things in the South that just don't work. So you got April 23rd, 1957 on top, and Antonino Rocca beat Mario Galinto, and they drew 3,400.
Wow. So Rocca just wasn't a draw in the South.
Nope.
Why was that?
I don't know. I mean, Bruno didn't draw in St. Louis. It just doesn't, something about the market just doesn't relate.
Different styles of work.
Different styles.
Buying
Yeah.
the work. And you know, that's an example. You're seeing all this blood and guts, and all of a sudden this little Fetchy guy comes down with a lot of flying in there. They're just not used to that style there. They hadn't seen it.
Right.
And they had Yvonne Robert, who's like the biggest Canadian star of all time on these cards.
Of all
too.
time.
Yeah, they got him on these cards too, and they're only drawing 4,000. So May 7th, 1958, Mario Galinto and Ginger the Bear, and it's a disqualification after Galinto refused to continue after Ginger's handler took her muzzle off.
I went through.
That's great. What a great Southern wrestling finish.
I ain't getting back in there now.
Got the muzzle off. I ain't getting that's great.
And great Malenko, the Frank Fazio, and Ray Stevens on top on that card. And then sometime in 1958, around May of 58, which we're transitioning into about the time that Buddy is going to be talking to Roy, and Roy's going to tell him, hey, we've bought Memphis, and we just cannot seem to get it going. You got them on fire down there in the Gulf Coast. What would you think about maybe coming up and taking a look? So this is about this time, and so it's interesting that Rocky McGuire has now been named and licensed with Alabama as to be the new promoter in the Gulf Coast territory. And he's another Dyersburg guy. He's from Cleveland, Tennessee. He grew up with Dick Dunn and Don Carson. Those guys are both from Cleveland, Tennessee. And another guy we're going to talk about in episode 5 is from Cleveland,
What's
Tennessee.
in that damn water in Dyersburg, Tennessee, man?
I don't know, but another guy that's going to come in
There was
episode
that high
5.
school up in Minnesota, Robbinsdale, was it?
Same deal. Yeah, and
You
West
know, that's
Texas
pretty impressive
University.
that Buddy was doing such a good job that his dad, who's one of the greatest promoters of all time, asked him advice about how do we pop Memphis.
Yeah, because Roy's booking Memphis. Roy is the booker for Memphis,
and he's having the problems with it. So he calls his son, who's has business set on fire down in Mobile, and says, "How can we get this thing going?" That's pretty. That says a lot about Buddy.
And what's interesting is, and this is what we were just talking about with bringing the New York guys and the Canadian guys down and it not drawing. So Nashville is on fire. They had that 18 sellout run with the Fargos in 57 in Nashville. And then they take it over to Memphis, and it doesn't do that great. And so Roy is trying to do the same things in Memphis that he's doing in Nashville in the first year or so. They own it, and they just can't get it to draw. They can't get it going. So he looks at what Buddy's doing down in Mobile, and he's like, well, maybe that'll work up here in Memphis. So Rocky McGuire, just to kind of finish him off. Another guy I was going to say that we're going to talk about in episode 5 of who's from Cleveland. So Dick Dunn's from there, Don Carson's from there, Rocky McGuire's from there, and J.C. Dykes is from there. And we're going to talk about J.C. coming up in episode 5.
Another one of my favorite people.
Lee Fields, once he bought the Mobile office in the Gulf Coast territory from Buddy, Fields had been a main eventer, and he put Rocky McGuire as his on-screen front man also. So Rocky's going to stay down in Alabama forever. And Rocky is going to become the promoter for Dothan. And they had that famous building, the Houston Farm Center, and Dothan, Alabama.
Worked there.
And Rocky McGuire is going to be the promoter there in Dothan. And he eventually is going to handle pretty much the Florida side of the Gulf Coast territory, Dothan, Pensacola, Panama Beach, and those markets. So Wednesday, June 11th. Now here we go. We're going to start drawing again. June 11th, 1968, Rocky McGuire's the promoter. And here's the introduction of another fella who's going to be really instrumental in today's episode. It's the first appearance of Billy Wicks. Billy Wicks is in the opening match, and he beats John Smith. That's the Wolfman John Smith.
Wolfman John.
And Frank Fazio, the great Malenko, beat Rocky Colombo. Bobby Fields beat the great Sharoma, and Buddy Fuller in the main event beat Mario Galinto. They draw a little bit over 8,000 people. June 25th, Rocky McGuire promoter, Corsica Gene beat Dick Dunn. Billy Wicks beat Eduardo Perez. Great Malenko beat Ivan Robert. And in the main event, they reverse it. Mario Galinto beats Buddy Fuller by disqualification. They draw another 6,000 people. Then on July 3rd, 1958, Buddy Fuller beat Mario Galinto in Hattiesburg, Mississippi to win the Gulf Coast title. They come back on July 30th. They draw 3,000 people. Main event, John and Al Smith over Herb and Jack Welch. That match draws Nashville. That draws up there, but it doesn't draw here for some reason. So on September 17th of 58 in Lafayette, Louisiana, so we were talking a little bit about Louisiana earlier, and they are running Louisiana here from the Gulf Coast office. Billy Wicks beat Buddy Fuller to win the Gulf Coast title. So let's talk about Billy Wicks here.
Yeah, let me show you a picture there of people looking at Billy Wicks.
And that is the Tennessee title right there that he wins. Yeah. That's a brand new title that they created in Tennessee.
Now we're going to get in right now on his background, his training, because Billy's one of these. He was if MMA was around, he'd probably been one of the most dominant champions of all time.
Really, Billy was a heck of a shooter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Badass.
So, his father immigrated from Norway to the United States in 1912. They fled poverty and they got to the United States just in time to witness what he mistook for fireworks on the horizon, only to learn that they were seeing the distress rockets of the Titanic. And they settled down finally in St. Paul, Minnesota. And Johansson was his actual name, but they changed it to Johnson. And Billy started working out at his local YMCA at about 16 years old under someone named Quentin Dale Clark, and who was a collegiate wrestler who was about 5 years older. So he was about 21, but he saw potential in Billy and started working out with him. And he was known for working out with the boys there at the YMCA, and he drilled Billy Wicks in fundamentals, takedowns, pins, escapes. They sparred a lot. Later, Billy joined a lot of informal wrestling with McAllister College, and he took in a lot of amateur techniques there, ground control, leverage. It wasn't glamorous, but he was learning how to hook. He was learning how to wrestle. And he would one day be the guy who would actually define hooking in the carnival circuit. Right. So at 19 years old, he went on the road into carnival wrestling, where, to take on guys from the crowd, and it would test their mettle against these pros for prize money. And he just happened to run into a female wrestler at a St. Paul department store, and she tipped him off to these carnival shows that were going on with Dobson United shows and United Carnival shows, where he finally debuted in 1951 as a hook wrestler. And he relied on submissions to subdue rowdy marks from the crowd. And he met his most influential mentor, Harry Colin. And Henry Colin was a wily veteran in his late 50s, 160 pounds of all concrete and steel. And he had worked with guys like Farmer Burns. And that's where he had learned his training and hooking. And he stretched him every single day in training sessions and taught him the brutal poetry of catch wrestling, toe holds, double wrist locks, neck cranks, reverse step over toe holds that became Wicks's signature finishing move. He was the best pure wrestler I ever met, Wicks said, crediting Colin's old school philosophy that a true shooter wins with technique, not flash. Wicks also absorbed wisdom from Tony Morelli, Joe Pazandak, and the great Ed Strangler Lewis, where he learned backdrops, leg locks, and short arm leg scissors. There's a story about Billy wanted to break into St. Louis, and Wild Bill Longson was the guy you had to go through in order to work in St. Louis. And he got a call from whoever was booking at the time for Munchnick. He said, Wild Bill's down here. You need to come down and meet him and talk to him. So he goes down there and he meets Wild Bill, and Ed Strangler Lewis just happens to be there in the office that day. And Ed Lewis looks at Wicks and he says, well, do you want to crank necks together? And he said,
love
yeah,
that, the crank necks.
Yeah, you want to crank necks together? And he goes, sure. And so he works out with Ed Lewis there for a little while, and Ed's like impressed with him. He's like, this kid can actually shoot wrestle. Like, he's not just a working wrestler, he can actually wrestle. And so Ed was a big influence over him, and also spoke for him as he went out and tried to work. Now, he went out to McGurk's territory and couldn't survive. He didn't hardly get paid anything at all. He said he looked in the audience and goes, man, there's a good crowd here. How come I'm just getting $19? And so he left McGurk's promotion, where he was just barely getting by. He went then and met somebody who told him about Buddy Fuller's Gulf Coast territory in Alabama. So he got connected with Buddy, and he came in here in the Gulf Coast territory, and it was just a perfect alignment. And Buddy put him over, started working with them here in the Gulf Coast territory, and that's where their relationship really started, where it's going to play in huge in Memphis. So on March 4th, 1959, Buddy Fuller is the promoter here. Lee and Bobby Fields beat Doug and Red Donovan. Now, Doug and Red Donovan are going to come into play in episode 5, because we're going to talk about some of the tag teams that were flourishing in the Welch and Goulas territory and they became what were known as the Von Brauners. And so that's going to be interesting. So May 20th, 1959, Lee Fields and Billy Wicks, two big-time baby faces that he has built here in this territory, beat Dick Dunn and the Mighty Yankee by forfeit when Dunn and the Yankee had a falling out and both left the ring. May 27th, 1959, Gulf Coast title, Pepe Pasquale versus Al Spider Galento, who is subbing for the still recovering Mario Galento after his bear wrestling match. And they kept doing these matches at Ladd Stadium June through August of 59, somewhere between, 3, 5, 8, 10, 11, 12,000 people.
Now the Ladd Stadium, because I looked it up, there's a current Ladd Stadium where they play football. Is that have they just rebuilt it over the years?
I think it's probably rebuilt. Yeah. It can't be the same place.
But the original grounds is
on the regional. They rebuilt. I'm sure they rebuilt it on the original.
Yeah, because there's a modern new stadium there in Mobile. I looked it up on the internet just for reference and modern football field.
So evidently that conversation over the late summer that happened between Roy and Buddy went well, and Buddy's decided, and this is a thing that you will see over Buddy's career is after he kind of gets it going, he's bored. Like he wants to move on and conquer something new. So he sees Memphis as like the biggest challenge, right? And he kind of feels like, okay, I've done all this in the Gulf Coast. So essentially he offers to sell the Gulf Coast territory to Lee Fields. And Lee Fields is Roy Welch's nephew. And so he essentially tells him, if you'll buy my ranch and farm in Loxley, I'll just give you the wrestling business. That's the deal they made. So he bought his ranch and he bought his farm in Loxley, and the wrestling business came with it. And I don't have any idea what he paid for it. I'm sure they're still sending some money back to the Welch office, but I don't know how all that worked, and can't really find anybody that knew how it worked. But that was essentially the deal that they made, was buy the farm and get the wrestling business. So Buddy moves up to Memphis, and he takes over Memphis on Thanksgiving 1958, which is about 30 days before they really announced that Buddy is gone and Lee Fields is the new promoter in the Gulf Coast. So any other thoughts or questions about the Gulf Coast territory before we leave it?
No, so when Buddy got down there, did he start the territory there, or did he just kind of put it all together? I mean, was wrestling kind of already there, or was he the one that brought the territory to it?
It was like all of these towns in Tennessee. When Roy first got to Dyersburg, there was wrestling there, but the promoters weren't very good. The wrestling shows weren't very good. And he just took the best of the best that he could find, and he just assembled it and made a loop out of it. And that's kind of what Buddy did.
And do you know what he did with these promoters? Because you got a guy running a town. That guy wants to keep that town, whether he's good or not at it. He wants to keep it because he does it for either for prestige reasons or for money reasons, but he does it for reasons.
Right.
How did he deal with these guys?
He ran them off.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, he ran them off. He went in.
He just ran competition against them. He was better and said, "Screw you."
Well, in a lot of cases, he just went in there and said, "You don't come back here no more." He was like, "You're not a promoter here anymore. This town's mine now." And they weren't going to challenge Roy on it.
Now, how about the athletic commission? Once again, are they with
well,
them?
When Roy started doing that in the 30s, there wasn't an athletic commission.
Okay.
Now, down here in Alabama, they were already working with the athletic commission up in the northern part of the state, right? Because they bought Birmingham, and they bought all these towns that Chris Jordan was already running. And so these towns had kind of fallen off because Joe Gunther sold them the state of Alabama, and he moved to New Orleans, and he wasn't paying a lot of attention to South Alabama. So they already had licenses with the commission because they bought them from Joe Gunther, but nobody was really paying attention to them.
But now, Roy also helped start the commission, right?
In Tennessee.
Right. But,
yeah,
I mean, there's obviously a reason for that. He's got them in his back pocket.
Right. Which are going to come in episode 5. Yeah. We're going to talk about the commission quite a bit. But in Alabama, they already had a working relationship through Jordan and that purchase and all that stuff.
And how the territory do after Buddy left?
Great. Layfield's just kept it on fire, and there's going to be an interesting thing that's going to come up. There's going to be a little family infighting in episode 5. But Lee just he has a tremendous run from 1959 till around 1972 or 3. The 74, 75, 76, 77, the territory really kind of had fallen off. And we actually mentioned it in the Jim Barnett series that Barnett was going to buy it at the end of 75. He was going to buy the Gulf Coast territory, and then he and Eddie Graham were going to control everything from Florida to Texas and Louisiana. But that sale fell through.
It seems like at this time, Tony, you've got some things going on in the country that you've got like the Northeast kind of being controlled, by maybe Pfeffer and certainly Vince Senior, and along with Toots. You've got the West Coast that's separate. Then you've got some stuff up north, but this was like this huge section. This was just you only had like 5 sections, right?
Mm-hmm.
Approximately.
Yeah, something like that. McMahon went into New York in 1956 and consolidated the promoters there and took over the New York City. But then he controlled everything from New York down to Washington, D.C.
And then almost like the Mason-Dixon line, Roy had everything south,
just about,
except for Florida.
And Crockett.
And Crockett, yeah.
Crockett had the Virginia and the Carolinas.
Right.
And, well, it's safe to say, as we've been saying, that now that they are probably one of the most powerful families in wrestling business.
Well, geographically, they are the largest and most powerful.
Largest, yeah.
And literally, he couldn't control much anymore, could he?
No, not based on
there was no way
technology.
logistically to be able to control anything else.
Well, he's already splitting it. So now he's going to split it some more.
They're going to have how many pies do they have? Pieces of pie they have now? It's like 3 pieces of pie.
So now there's just two pieces, right? So you've got Tennessee, and you've got Northern Alabama and Northern Mississippi, and then you've got sending talent to Northern and Central Louisiana, and so Central and South Mississippi, and Alexandria, and what did we just say where he won the title in Louisiana? Shreveport? Lafayette, Louisiana, and then the Panhandle of Florida. So they got Pensacola, Panama Beach, those towns. That's all being split now. So they're splitting off the bottom half of the South. That's going to be a separate part of the territory, the Gulf Coast territory. So
Tony,
2 pieces. But then later on, they're going to open an office in Montgomery, Alabama. So they're going to split off Central Alabama. And then Central Mississippi is going to go to Leroy.
Well, what was the state of the business nationwide at this time? Was business thriving in other territories, or was it slow?
It's starting to come back because, as we said, from 1949 to 1955, wrestling was on fire in the United States because of the Dumont Network. But because we oversaturated it, it kind of burned out in the larger cities. And that's where the smaller territories were able to do their local television on local studio shows, and they started reviving it in the territories that way. And so business here in 1958, 59 in the territories was really starting to pick back up because of the ability to create and promote through local television. And pretty soon, in our last episode, pretty soon they're going to discover syndication. Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned in our last episode, talking about studio television, which we discussed in the Jim Barnett series that Jim Barnett created out of necessity. There were up to 10 studio shows a week that Roy was running for his territories down south, right?
Right. They just would go in and create a live studio show. If that local town promoter could go to the local television station and convince them to carry a wrestling show, the Nashville office would say, "We will send you guys. Don't worry about that. Just go in there and tell them you'll do a television show at their television station."
Wow. That's just a creative nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get all these shows together, everybody on the same page as far as booking and how towns work together. I mean, that's tough what he had put together.
Right. And I sent you guys those booking sheets from Jesse James. Did you look at those? I mean, you see where all the towns that he worked in, about 3 out of every one of them have parentheses, and it says TV. I mean, so they're making all these, TVs every other day almost.
I know when I left Oklahoma, I guess it's probably like 69 before 70 went to Louisiana. All those little Louisiana towns we had TVs, and whether afternoon there'd be some would be like Thursday afternoon do a TV show to be taped to air that weekend. We had several TVs just in those little Louisiana towns.
I just discovered this week, and I didn't know this. Maybe other people knew it, or it's been out there. I didn't know that. But living in Missouri all those years, I was really interested in the history of wrestling in Missouri. But Kirksville, Missouri, the Kansas City office had a live television show in Kirksville, which is almost halfway to Waterloo.
Wow.
So they were having live televisions out of the Kansas City office. They had to make Des Moines. They had to make Kirksville, Missouri. All of those towns had live television too. This is before.
Here's your guy Jesse James, right?
That's him.
Yeah, that's Jesse. Yeah.
Yep. I got to get there on there correct, so Les Thornton doesn't correct me online.
Les Thornton won't be corrected.
So, I'm just kidding, Les. I love you.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
So a little bit about Memphis history. So they first got television in 1949 on WMC TV 5. They broadcast the main event from Ellis Auditorium on Monday nights, and the host was Charlie Sullivan. And it's kind of hard to track down what happened in television from there. I think they pretty much kept that main event Monday night thing. Sam Avey and Leroy McGurk were booking the town from January of 52 to 54. And then from 1954 to June of 1956, the booking office changed to the St. Louis Wrestling Club. So Mushnick's office was booking it. Probably Bobby Bruns was booking a television taping at the WMC TV studios from 1956 to about June 30th of 56. And then Roy Welch bought Memphis from Les Wolf and Sam Avey. And the office in Nashville and Dyersburg took over booking the television show. The first show they booked was July 14th, 1956. So Avey was involved, Leroy was involved, Sam Mushnick was involved, and then Les Wolf eventually, he stayed around for a little while after Roy and Nick bought Memphis. By the way,
as a worker, right?
As a front promoter, like he was very connected with the Memphis community and stuff. So they, Les Wolf had bought Memphis from an old promoter named Charlie Rentrop in 1948. And then Wolf bought out McGurk and Avey in 1956. And he's the one that changed the booking office from St. Louis to Roy and Nick. He worked with Roy and Nick for about a year. They were sending him talent for the TV show and for the house shows, and then they officially bought the town from him in June of 57 after about a year.
Tony, is there anything in Dyersburg now that's historical that has reference to all this stuff? Because everything is being run out of there, which is kind of crazy. But I don't understand why. That's where Roy's from. But anything historical there?
So Tim Deals, he's like the big Tennessee historian that I work with a lot, and I work with a lot for this show. He's on my podcast a lot, and we do Tennessee shows. And he and I are going to take a trip to Dyersburg next year. So we're going to go to Dyersburg. There's a Dyersburg Historical Society there. There's a library there where, you can go there and find a lot of things you can't find on the regular internet because they got them archived there. So we're going to go to Dyersburg next year.
Dyersburg is on the internet?
Well, I hope so. I hope so. I went through Dyersburg here about 3 or 4 years ago. I was down in Kennett, Missouri, working with a client, and I thought there didn't used to be a bridge there, but there's a bridge there now where you can go from Missouri. Because all these guys, even in the Don Fargo book that I read for information, he was talking about they had to take the ferry back in the late 50s to get across the Mississippi River. But anyway, there's a bridge there now from Kennett over to Dyersburg and make the trip real easy.
Traveling was impossible, it seemed like, back in those days. You really had to be dedicated to the traveling if you wanted to get town to town.
The other thing that's kind of interesting about Memphis is that they only used heavyweights. And normally, and this was the big town in Tennessee that Roy didn't have. And so the way he got Nashville was he went in and ran light heavyweights and then eventually got the town, but he never did that in Memphis, and I don't know why. The heavyweights, they never ran junior heavyweights there, and I don't know why that was. That must have been another one of those political
Because
things.
Sam and Leroy, once again, they were junior heavyweight.
Yeah, but
too.
they didn't book that many light heavyweights there. That's another weird thing about it is they were known for light heavyweights, but they didn't really promote it there. They just they used Lou and the heavyweights in St. Louis to run there, and they never did that. So anyway, it's a big purchase. They spent $30,000. They paid Les Wolf for the town, and Nick was against
That'd be
it.
equivalent to what nowadays, about 90,000, something like that.
Oh, probably more than that. I didn't run the calculator on that one, but we will.
What year was it?
1959 or 1957. So $30,000 in 1957 in today's money.
Yep. We'll find out.
Yeah.
With $345,000
Wow.
So almost $350 for what it would be today.
in today's money.
And think about the millions of dollars that they took out of Memphis over the years for that investment. $30,000.
Pretty good investment.
Pretty good investment. So not from 1957 to Thanksgiving night 1958, that's about a year and a couple of months. Doesn't take very long for Roy to sit there and go, this ain't working for some reason. And he sees Buddy got the Gulf Coast on fire. So he brings him in. Thanksgiving night, 1958. They got just about 400 people there. They'd been drawing 400 to 500, 600 people the whole time that they've been in Memphis. According to my conversation with Ron Fuller, he says he was there that first night that Buddy came in, and he went around and was talking to the wrestling fans. Buddy was talking to the wrestling fans. Ron was standing back near the dressing room. And so Buddy comes back, and Ron goes, "Hey, Dad," he goes, "what are you doing talking to all those people? What were you saying to them?" He goes, "I told them not to come back." He said,
Wow.
"I told them they're killing my town. They're skeptical. They don't believe nothing. They don't boo. They don't cheer. They just sit there. I just tell them we don't need them. Don't come back to wrestling.
Don't take these prime seats."
What a great lesson for any type of entertainment. I mean, that's what that scares people to death. You run off the hardcore fans because what you want is the family of four that comes and will spend a ton of money instead of the hardcore fans that actually can run off a lot of people.
Yeah,
that's pretty ballsy to do. Not many people would do that.
Real ballsy to do.
I mean, you look at a gym. You don't want the guys that come in there and work out 7 days a week, twice a day. And though you're muscle heads, you want the guys that come in that work out once a week and spend money, buy protein drinks and T-shirts and stuff.
He's like,
it's just a simple business dynamic, but very few people are willing to do that because nobody wants to alienate this hardcore base.
Right.
Sometimes it's best for business.
He said they're just too jaded. They don't believe anything. Like they won't invest their emotions in anything. They're taking up my best seats, and I'd rather have somebody else. So I just told them don't.
That's a ballsy move, man. That's impressive.
So
you'd rather have Jared's mom sitting out there,
right?
Yeah. His
grandmother.
Grandmother. Yeah. So on December 1958, I thought this is pretty interesting. In the Memphis paper, there's an ad that says there will be no wrestling card on December 16th because Buddy Fuller was not happy with the wrestlers last week. And he is out of the area looking for new talent.
Wow.
And he
fired the crew.
Yep. And he's concentrating on lining up a super Christmas.
Okay, wait a minute. Who was on top?
Let's see.
So he goes in, he fires the fans, he fires the wrestlers, he fires
That's great.
Buddy
fired the entire arena.
That's a shame, my John. That's ballsy as hell.
Oh my God, he fired. That's right, Jerry. He fired the fans. He fired the wrestlers.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
If you had him come in as your manager, like, what have you done? What have you possibly done?
All right,
Roy had to be sent back there. What I create here, man?
Roy had to be like, oh my God.
Okay, so here's who was on the card the week before.
And this is the card he had to be pissed about. This was the one that he had to be really pissed about.
Yeah.
Was this card here?
Yeah, it was Gorgeous George and Don Fields.
Wow.
The Gorgeous George.
Yep. And here's what the newspaper ad said. It said Gorgeous George and Billy Wicks found themselves disqualified. And so that's not what's in the ad, but in the recap, it's Gorgeous George and Billy Wicks found themselves disqualified last night in their, it's hard to read, their important third fall of the wrestling show at the auditorium. They were tied 1-1 in the feature match, but decided to fight the finale outside of the ring and finish there too after the disqualification. Then there's this ad next week, December 15th, and the headline says, and I'll send this to you guys, Fuller scouting for ring talent. No wrestling card tomorrow. Buddy Fuller, Memphis' new wrestling promoter, has canceled plans for an auditorium card tomorrow night and will concentrate on lining up a Super Christmas charity card for the 22nd. Fuller, who took over from Les Wolf recently, was not satisfied with the wrestlers who performed last week and decided to skip a week and bring fans a great show to start off Christmas. While Fuller is scouting the South for talent, planners of a variety show will be presented along with the wrestlers on December 22nd, and they're lining up some good acts for that.
Wow, what great promotion! I mean, that's just brilliant.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Now,
What happened? What happened to the crew? I mean, did they get transferred down to Mobile or?
No, he brings them back. He brings Gorgeous George back on the 22nd. Yeah, so he brings Gorgeous George back on the Christmas show.
What about Billy Wicks?
Not on the Christmas show.
But he brought him back at one point. So it wasn't Wicks and George.
Right.
So it was because you can judge by who he kept, who he blames it on. He obviously didn't blame it on them. So he blamed it on the other talent that he thought was terrible.
So, no, he did bring Billy Wicks back. So the Christmas charity show had Yvonne Robert and Gorgeous George, Sputnik Monroe and Don Fields and Billy Wicks and Tom Drake. And they raised $200 for the charity fund. So they still weren't really drawing that great. But and this is about the time that Buddy starts doing the fan challenges, the wrestler from the crowd, fan from the crowd challenges the wrestler gimmick too. So he puts that in as a, he'll give you $100 if you can beat my wrestler gimmick, which no fan ever does. But
who was the wrestler? Was it Billy Wicks?
Oh, I think it was a different guy. He would use a different guy, for every card. Yeah.
How much of that? I feel like such a mark even asking. How much was it work? Any idea?
I don't know.
I mean, it could have been 100% work. Could have been 100% shoot.
Well, it could have been like the old Carney days, which they all brought up on. Put the plan out in the audience area.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So this is the first appearance here about this time of Sputnik Monroe. Yeah. And so Sputnik Monroe was a guy that had been in the Gulf Coast. So he's starting to think about, how can I get this territory blown open? How can I get it on fire like I got the Gulf Coast going?
One thing you can do is fire the crew.
Yep.
The fans.
So I mean, you got to switch it up, So he ran the fans off, and he's got to switch up the wrestlers. So Sputnik Monroe got into carnival wrestling in 1945 when he was just 17 years old, using the name Rock Monroe. His real name is Roscoe Monroe Merrick.
It's what's his real name?
Roscoe Monroe Merrick Brumbaugh.
No wonder he chose Sputnik.
Well, he didn't really choose it. So this is the story. So he gets into carnival wrestling as Rock Monroe, and he evolved from a carnival scrapper to this boastful wrestler that we know today. But fresh out of the Navy, he teams up with a guy in Wichita, Kansas. They take on all comers in these tent shows, working for Jack Nasworthy, who was running the most successful string of at shows in the carnival business at the time. And so Sputnik would do that. And Nasworthy would tell him, if you get beat, you're finished. You just have to pack your bag and leave. If anybody from the crowd ever beats you, you're fired. So Sputnik never got beat in 5 years that he worked in the carnival.
Wow.
5 years. He said if they
Sputnik, as we said last week, Sputnik was not a giant of a man either.
Right. And he, so I think, let's see. Yeah, he, he didn't get beat in 5 years, and he said that Monday through Thursday they challenged marks from the crowd, right? And if Monday through Thursday didn't go well, then he had a stick man, that would come up out of the crowd. That was a work to get more interest going. So Nasworthy sent him over. This is where the wrestling and the carnivals are working together. Nasworthy sends him over in Emporia, Kansas one night, sends him over to the matches to challenge Wild Red Berry. So Wild Red Berry comes over to the carnival and they have a match. And they sold out the carnival like 5 times before Wild Red Berry went on to his next wrestling town. But they worked together a lot of times.
So Wild Red Berry came in. He was the plant, right? He was the one that.
Yeah, right. He became.
They sold it out how many times?
5 times.
How did they kept doing the same plant? The same guy kept challenging.
They kept running the crowd out and bringing a new crowd in.
And just running the same angle in the same building.
Same angle, same building.
They had to be good.
Wow. No, so tell us how the angle went.
So Wild Red Berry would come in and he'd be the stick man. He's the pro wrestler. So he's the guy that says, hey, I can take you on. And Sputnik is the carnival wrestler, right? Yeah. And so
there's Sputnik for those wondering.
Sputnik.
That's Sputnik.
Look at that hairstyle. Who's that hairstyle remind you of nowadays?
Our billionaire boss?
Yeah. X-Boss, John.
X-Boss. That's right, X-Boss. Yeah, you tell him he's an ex-boss. He'll call you.
Yeah. No, thank you.
So people would start telling people, hey, Wild Red Berry's down there is challenging this carnival wrestler.
So Wild Red Berry, he challenged him as Wild Red Berry.
Right.
So he came down, hey, I'm a pro wrestler. I whoop your ass.
Yeah. And the buzz starts going out across the carnival, and then people are like, hey, I'll get into that. I'll go. I want a ticket for that. I want a ticket
Have you ever seen Wild Red Berry, John? But
no.
he's a small guy, about Sputnik size, not as heavy as Sputnik though.
But a tough guy.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough guy. Yeah.
So
talker.
After working the carnival scene in the 1950s, he migrates south, and so he goes down near Gulf Coast in Texas, and so. One incident that occurred during a match when an opponent shattered a wooden chair over his head, put splinters in his scalp, and caused a silvery white streak to grow in his black hair. And then he just started dyeing that.
That's where he got the streak from, huh?
Right. And then 1957.
And there is your Wild Red Berry, right?
That's him.
See, he's not a husky guy.
But you can tell he's charismatic, dude. He became one of the top managers in the business.
So he came down. Here's what I love about it. He came down in a shoot setting and sold the place out with a work 5 times in a row at the same building, just changing out the people.
That's right.
Doing the same thing over and over and over. And then working a match, and people believed it was a shoot and left happy.
Right. That's it.
And Sputnik became bigger and bigger and bigger because Red's putting him over every show.
Right. Yep. And so then he gets out of carnivals, goes down, gets hit in the scalp with this chair, causing this white thing in his hair. And so he starts dyeing it and accenting it to make it more noticeable. Then in 1957, here's the big thing that happens. So he's working in the Gulf Coast territory for Buddy Fuller. He's going to a television wrestling show at WKRG television. He picks up a black hitchhiker. And then at the studio, he embraces the black hitchhiker and kisses him on the cheek in front of everybody in the television studio, prompting an outraged woman to say he's a damn Sputnik.
What is Sputnik?
It's the Soviet satellite.
Sputnik, the Soviet satellite that was going around the world at the time.
1957.
The first satellite.
Yeah, but how does that reference have to do with?
It was called Sputnik. It was called Sputnik.
And he's a commie.
He called him a commie because he kissed a black person.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
so you got the. I knew what the Sputnik was. I just didn't know why they called him a Sputnik for.
Yeah. It was a.
So you kiss a black person, you don't like it because you're a racist, so you say, okay, he must be a communist.
That's right.
It makes perfect sense to me. I grew up in the South. I've seen that a lot.
So he embraces it. and starts calling himself Sputnik Monroe.
That is one of the greatest bits of trivia in wrestling history. I had no idea about that. Jerry, did you know that?
I didn't know why he called it. I just figured it was because the Russians had put up the they wanted heat, so he called himself Sputnik.
So this
I didn't know
woman
about
gets
the
all this woman. She gets all mad, you know, because he kissed the black guy, and a red scare is going
kissed
on.
a black guy too on top.
Heaven forbid.
The red scare's going on right now. You know, McCarthy's after all these people, and the Russians just beat us into space with the first.
Which we'll talk about one day. McCarthy was after Pat Patterson too, but we'll talk about that some other time.
The Russians just beat us into space, so the Russians are obviously the heels, and so she calls him essentially a Sputnik, and he embraces it. He starts going on television, calling himself, "I'm Sputnik Monroe."
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
He is becoming my favorite person in the world.
So he starts calling himself Sputnik Monroe.
I mean, Sputnik there's so much to this guy, Sputnik. I mean, just the guy, what a legend. I mean, I just look
you see why I talk about him all the time, John.
Oh my God. I just looked up online how Sputnik ended Jim Crow in the South. I mean, the stuff of him integrating arenas, which I know we'll talk about, the stuff of him getting knocked out by some cowboy and so, years later, it's this guy's just a walking story.
So Buddy Fuller sees all that, and he, has got him in the Gulf Coast, and so he asked him to come over from Texas. And by the way, before he left Texas to come up to Memphis, he's done all this in the Gulf Coast. Buddy wants to help him light a fire in Memphis, so he tells him to come up. And before he leaves Texas, he wrestles a bear. Brownie, the wrestling bear. Monroe lost to the bear in 11 minutes, put the bear over. Left town, heads to Memphis.
He had a losers leave town match with a bear?
With a bear.
Yep.
He's the greatest person in the history of the world.
So and he beats the damn bear. The bear's got to pack his bag and leave.
The bear had to leave and go to like a zoo in Minnesota.
So so he's on this first show.
Who in the hell would have a loser leaves town match with a bear?
So he's on this first show that Buddy Fuller has after he canceled the show and fired the crew. So Sputnik is the first guy that comes in, right on the Christmas charity show. And he beats one of the Welch's nephews, Don Fields. Then on January 19th, 1959, Sputnik gets a win over another big Welch babyface, Tex Riley. And then he gets beaten in the rematch the next week by the special referee, which was former light heavyweight boxing champion Joey Maxim. And this angle led to a 10-round boxing match with Maxim where Monroe was knocked out in the 6th round on February 2nd. On February 15th, Sputnik lost to Brownie, the 400-pound wrestling bear, in Memphis. And at this point, Fuller's drawing about 4,100 people. So he's got it up from 300, and 500 after he's run everybody off. By February 15th, he's got it up to 4,100.
8 weeks later.
8 weeks later.
Yeah.
That's got to be tough, though, do a working match with a shoot bear. I mean, you think about what he just did back-to-back weeks. He has a working match with a shoot boxing champion, which is damn near impossible. It's so hard to work those. That's a horrible match to work. Then he has a working match with a shoot bear.
And they got it up to 4,000 people coming.
Wow.
He's the greatest of all time.
Go Sputnik.
Now
Sputnik is our guy.
Now at this time, they get television. So they get a television show February 1959 on WMC television. So they've done this up till now without really having TV. So now they get on WMC Channel 5. Channel 5 moved over to a new facility on Union Avenue where they still function today. And he gets a Saturday afternoon show from 5 to 6 o'clock. And he takes the sports guy, Big Jack Eaton, and he makes him the host. Jack Eaton is known all over Memphis. He's the voice of the Memphis Tigers, which at the time was Memphis State. And he is the big sports personality in town, so he gets him to host the wrestling show.
Credibility to your product, right?
That's right. Yeah. So This is perfectly made for a guy like Sputnik Monroe.
And that was
He,
revolutionary, Jerry. You know it since. Bill Mercer was the one famously in Texas that told Lee Harvey Oswald that he's being charged murder for the president. He was a shoot reporter. I mean, a lot of these guys, that he brought in, Lance Russell, all these guys were, shoot something. Then you bring him over his credibility, and do the same thing now with Joe Tessitore and Pat McAfee. It's it's a very time honored tradition. It just started, in days like this.
Big Jack Eaton stayed at that same television station until 1991.
Wow.
I mean, that's what kind of career he had. And when Jarrett split off from the Tennessee territory and split off from Nick Goulas, he went on WMC. And that's where Big Jack Eaton still was. And that's why they got a lot of coverage in that territory, was because Big Jack Eaton had started out with them back in 1959. And he would he would report wrestling on the sports like it was just like another, like baseball or basketball.
Look at what they're doing now with ESPN.
Same thing.
It's the same deal. You got your show on there for the big pay-per-view platforms, but they cover it now on the Shoot ESPN sports shows. It just gives credibility and tons of more coverage when you're partnering with these legit like the wrestling isn't legit. It's legit as anything. It's entertainment program.
These guys were doing revolutionary things back in the 60s back in there. It's amazing.
Brilliant. Well, absolutely brilliant. And TV had just started, so they're the first thinking about this stuff.
I mean, honestly, all sports are manipulated.
You think?
Yeah, really?
I mean, they are. I mean, that's the whole object of being in a sports game, is to manipulate the game. I mean, that's all a coach does. The whole game is try to manipulate the game.
If you start telling me roller derbies will work, we're going to have problems.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you go down this rabbit hole.
Don't
you go down this rabbit hole here, Tony.
I mean, just think about it. I mean, Kansas City this Sunday, we were talking about that game. They were trying to manipulate the game and almost did with their defense. Yeah. All sports are manipulated. Wrestling's just probably the most manipulated.
I just love that Sputnik took his name from some racist rat who called him that as an insult. That's the greatest essence or origin of a nickname I've ever heard.
And Jerry, did you hear that? I mean, back way a long time ago, instead of calling them bookers, they called them manipulators.
Manipulators, yeah.
Did they really? I never heard that term.
Yeah. Manipulators.
Yeah, they would say they're going to territory. They'd say, "Oh,
really?
Who's the manipulator there?"
Okay, they use that term when I broke in it. They use that term in Oklahoma when I was breaking into business a lot.
In the 60s,
Leroy really never had a manipulator, but he had Jack Gott, Neil Vall, some of those old timers that were refereeing. They would be his local manipulator, they call it.
That is so. I never heard that. So in the 60s and 70s, that term was still being used?
Oh, yeah. In the 60s, especially, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Who's your manipulator? Or I'm going there to be the manipulator. That was what they would call it.
And then it morphed into Booker because it was easier to digest if fans heard you talk about it.
Yeah. Right. So here's Sputnik on this brand new television show in Memphis on WMC TV, and he's coming out there now calling himself the Sweet Man and the Diamond Ring and Cadillac Man. From the first time he appeared on television, more and more black people are coming to the matches. And Sputnik would go down to Beale Street, and I think Buddy and Roy were in on this. I mean, they were sending him down there, I'm pretty sure. But he was going.
We got to find out from Ron or Rob about if they were in on it, because this is one of the biggest deals in wrestling history.
Ron told me Buddy was in on it.
Really?
Okay. Yep.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yep. And so go down there and do this thing and strut around and go to the blues bars and the African American bars. And this is, I mean, Beale Street's a tourist attraction now, but it wasn't back then, right? It was not back then.
I mean, even for a Caucasian to go down there was ballsy, as we say.
Yeah, and so he's in there in one of the black bars, and the police come in. And they've heard of white guys in there, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm having a drink with my black friends." And they arrested him for what was called mopery back then, which was an old Southern vagrancy charge.
A special place in hell is reserved for those police officers that arrested him.
So Sputnik goes to court with a black attorney.
No!
Wow.
Yep. So first time in Memphis history, a white person is represented in court by a black lawyer.
You're kidding me.
Right. He goes in there with Russell Sugarman Jr., who is a black attorney in Memphis.
The nickname alone just puts him over.
Yep.
Russell Sugarman Jr.
Yep. And so
Love it.
this is building this big reputation with the black community, and more black fans are coming to the Ellis Auditorium. And so the main part of the building for wrestling in the Ellis holds about 6,000. They got another part of the building separated by a concrete steel curtain. I don't know if it was steel or concrete, but it would raise and lower, and that added about another 2,000. So they'd raise that curtain, and that's where the black fans would sit. They'd sit in the 2,000-seat upper balcony. They would call it the Crow's Nest, and they would sit up there, and Sputnik would come to the ring, and he developed this gimmick over time where he'd stick his finger in the air, and he'd look up at the Crow's Nest to the black fans. He'd stick his finger in the air. He'd touch the top of his head, and he'd trace down the front of his face, and these people would just go berserk. They would just go wild over this just little gesture that he would do.
Meaning what? Meaning what, the gesture?
I don't know what it meant, but they just went nuts over it.
It
was like Hogan doing this, it's like Hogan cupping his ear,
Yeah.
I mean, Sputnik was just doing this, and they would just go nuts for him. It was their
Tony, just show you how racist some of our guys were back then. When like I said, I went to Louisiana. I've never seen this before. We go to some of those, really, really small towns, Opelika or something like that, or Opelousas, Louisiana. And Tarzan Baxter was a heel at the time. He would go to the ring. He'd get on the second rope. He'd point up to the up, and I never could figure this out. And he'd like a machine gun, and sharp machine gun, and I pretended he was machine gun these people. I asked, what are they doing? That's where black people used to sit. I thought you were kidding me.
So I mean,
it's just unbelievable. You look through today's lens, you're like, how does this even happen?
So then Sputnik comes out publicly in the newspapers and says, I am not going to wrestle anymore until black fans are allowed to sit in the main lower area, and they can sit wherever they want. If they can't do that, I ain't wrestling. Now, Roy and Buddy got to be in on this.
They
right?
got to be in on that.
I mean, because
you couldn't do that without the promoter's permission, because they just fire you.
Well, the thing is like the city of Memphis isn't going to go along with it, but how do I get this integrated? Well, I got this heel that can manipulate things into us getting in a situation where we can have an integrated audience, and that's exactly what Sputnik does.
And Jerry, real quick, who was the Tarzan? What was his last name?
Tarzan Baxter.
I just looked it up.
I mean, the only person that could get away with this and saying this and forcing the promoter's hands at this and the city government's hand in making it happen is Sputnik Monroe. He is the only guy that could pull this off after all these other things that we just talked about that this guy's done, right?
He's created such a black audience following there. It's unbelievable.
And so the Ellis Auditorium crowds become integrated. No riots, no incidents. Nobody gets hurt. It's a domino effect. And then all of a sudden, the whole city of Memphis is taking its first steps toward racial audience integration, not just at wrestling, but at rock and roll shows and dance floors. Used to have ropes.
So everybody followed Pew on that thing.
I mean, Sputnik literally integrated a lot of the South.
A lot of the South, yeah.
Was there any pushback right away that you've known from in history of, all of a sudden now, instead of having blacks have their own section, now they're sitting next to whites, and that they're not used to that? And
they typically at rock and roll shows would have a rope that separated. One half would be this, and the other half would be that. But essentially, the ropes came down. People were mixing together. I mean, even happened on American Bandstand.
Dick Clark, that's what I was going to ask you. Even Dick Clark started doing that.
Yeah, dance floors on the American Bandstand that are going into homes all over America is integrated. And so it just slowly but surely went that direction. But the dominoes fell first in Memphis.
Wow. So Sputnik was the first. And now, as far as the charge, what do you got? Sugarman Jr. as his representative.
He got off.
He got off and then went in, and he says, hey, I'm not going to wrestle unless the whole thing's integrated. And now all of a sudden you've got blacks and whites sitting together as they should have been all along. And now the whole state is starting to change, the whole South.
And by winning that court case and getting off for that, it's building all this momentum for him. He's on a roll, you know, and the black community is firmly behind him. And
But
he
how
starts,
great is he to get a black attorney? I mean,
yeah,
that's
Yeah.
genius.
Did they actually go to court and all that, or their court
yeah,
documents on this?
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, they
So,
took Sputnik down to jail, didn't they, to book him?
oh, I'm sure they did. Yeah,
Yeah. Because
yeah.
that was always the story. They actually took him to jail. Didn't put him in jail, took him down to jail and gave him a whatever fine and all that stuff, and told him not to go back. And apparently, he went right back. Was from
Right back.
what history said.
Right back down
That
there.
man had if he I don't know if he only had 2 balls, but he had big balls.
So what happens then? Just like Mario Galinto had done in the angle in the Gulf Coast with Buddy Fuller, Sputnik starts doing that on television with Billy Wicks. He goes on television, starts trash talking him, saying Billy Wicks is afraid of me. He don't want to wrestle me. He don't want to take me on. So they have a match on April the 6th. Sputnik Monroe beat Billy Wicks 2 out of 3 falls in front of what the newspaper calls one of the largest wrestling crowds in years in Memphis. April 13th, Monroe beat Wicks again before a near-capacity crowd. April 20th, he beat Spider Galinto, sending him to the hospital, with the crowd reported at 5,699 people, the largest wrestling crowd since 1949 in Memphis. Sputnik is the hottest act in town, man.
So, was Sputnik this whole time, was he a heel?
Mm-hmm.
But now he obviously the black crowd probably liked him, right?
Oh yeah, he was a babyface for the black.
So you've got like Let's Go Cena, Cena sucks, but it's divided by racial lines, right?
Sputnik might be the first tweener. I mean, he could be, I guess.
So white people are booing the hell out of him, black people are cheering the hell out of him.
Or the white people are more cheering Billy Wicks.
Yeah, they're not. Maybe if they're not, but they're not cheering for Sputnik. Right. He's a heel, but
correct.
The black people are like, hey, we had our own section and they sucked. What? And you're the one that started integrating things. They've got to love the guy.
So Buddy's on a roll here. He's got the crowd up to almost 6,000 people.
Wow.
Where just like 4 months before was 300. So he comes out and says, we're going to have a Tennessee state champion. That's that belt that you showed that Billy had. So we're going to have a Tennessee state champion. We're going to have a tournament to crown the first, just like he did in the Gulf Coast with the first Gulf Coast champion. So we're going to have a Tennessee champion. So the tournament starts on April 27th. Sputnik beats Lester Welch right off the bat. May the 4th, Sputnik and Billy Wicks meet again, going to a time limit draw with a crowd of 5,000. Spider Galinto was back from his injury on May 18th as a wild double count-out finish. The return match is booked as the best 3 out of 5 falls and no time limit on Hodges Field for June the 1st.
Best 3 out of 5?
Yep.
Wow.
Best 3 out of 5, no time limit.
Oh.
They're going to have it at Hodges Field, but it rains it out. So they got to bring it indoors to Ellis Auditorium, where Monroe won the title. He beat Spider Galinto when Spider Galinto couldn't answer the bell after the 5th fall. And Monroe had nailed him with a chair, by the way. Through June, Monroe beats Larry Shane, George Curtis, and our buddy Jesse James. Meanwhile, Billy Wicks has not yet been defeated. So they finally meet in the finals for the Tennessee title on June the 29th at Ellis Auditorium. They drew 5,000 people, with Wicks coming out being the first Tennessee champion, and that was the photo that you show. And he also won a brand new Cadillac, too. And the undercard was Mighty Yankee and Al Galinto, Rocky Colombo and Lee Fields, and Red Roberts and Tom Drake.
Was this when they allegedly carried the Cadillac out of the field?
That was a stadium show, and this was at Ellis, so I don't think it was here. But I'm still looking for that show where they carried the Cadillac out to Commercial Avenue.
So Sputnik comes in and just sets the whole place on fire, changes the dynamic of equality in the South. And literally, this is all based on him. Now, you got to have Billy Wicks. You got to have the antagonist. I know that. And you got to have Buddy Fuller, the puppeteer behind it all. But Sputnik was about the main cog in this whole thing, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was the driving force here.
Man, I knew what a legend he was because I rode with Skandor Akbar, and he loved Sputnik. I mean, absolutely, he loved Sputnik. They were really good friends, apparently. But when I rode with him in Texas, I rode for a couple weeks one time, and I didn't know half of that. We should go back in history and just, God, I'd love to talk to him and just
Oh yeah,
things.
yeah. And Jerry wants to do a whole Sputnik show sometime.
We should
Yes,
do a whole
I-
Sputnik show.
Because we'll get into his brother's rocket and jet.
Yeah. And and let's talk about the Cadillac tournament. It wasn't like the promoters were given the talent a Cadillac. What the story was is that usually a guy would want to buy a new car, like Welch's, and we're friends with the Cadillac dealership. Go down there and buy a Cadillac. But before you buy it, we could have a Cadillac tournament where we present this Cadillac to you.
Yeah.
Hey, Jerry, they did that in Europe one time, and somebody smartened up one of the guys. Well, how do I know you're going to get it? And the guy told him it was a work, and the guy had to work with Finley.
Oh God!
Oh, buddy!
What to work in?
So there's a whole story here that Billy Wicks was talking about. I saw an interview where he said, "I would do anything in the world for Buddy Fuller. He wanted me to break my arm. He said, I'll tell you what, you go ahead and break your arm. Not too bad, just one of the small bones."
Yeah, small bone. It's a small bone.
And he said, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you.
Listen how crazy this is. I mean, this is nuts.
Yeah, I want you to break your arm. Not too bad, one of the small bones. I'll take care of you. I'll give you a main event payoff for 6 weeks, and then we'll come back with it. And so he asked Sputnik to break my arm, and Sputnik wouldn't do it. So he said originally Sputnik was supposed to win the Cadillac and the Tennessee title, but Fuller called a last-minute audible. He said, Buddy Fuller came to me and said, look, I don't think it's a good idea for the bad guy to win the Cadillac. He said, I want you to win it, Billy. But let me ask you, what if Sputnik don't want to go for it? Can you take him? And Wick goes, no doubt in my mind. So I won the Cadillac. Wow. But he said, but I won the Cadillac, but I got busted up doing it. And I sent you guys a photo of that today on text. Yeah. Did you see Wicks's face?
Yeah, I saw him.
Yeah. Did you see it, John?
I didn't know. I was trying to figure out how to get my arm.
Yeah, that's right.
De-elephantized today.
Yeah, I sent you.
People can see there. I've got a little bit of an issue with my arm.
Looked like you've been in with Sputnik and Billy.
That's right. That's right. No Cadillac prize though.
So during his Tennessee title defense against Mario Galento on July 13th, Sputnik Monroe attacks Wicks, setting up another rematch on July the 20th, where he won in 3 falls by Wicks. Roy, Buddy, and Sputnik and Wicks all saw this thing has got momentum. And this
was what you sent, right?
Yeah, that's Billy Wicks there in that photo after the Cadillac tournament.
And these boys weren't blading back then, right? Because that was hard way.
Hard way. Well, Buddy's asking him to break his arm. So
yeah, which is easier?
Yeah,
which bone? Just a little one.
So Roy sees this, Buddy sees this, Sputnik, Wicks, they all see this got momentum. So they get a Tennessee title rematch, Russwood Park, outdoor ball field, August 3rd, just 18 months before. They're drawing 300 people in Memphis, and now they're moving to a baseball outdoor ballpark where they drew 10,157 fans, with Sputnik Monroe finally winning the Tennessee title, the largest crowd to see a wrestling card in Memphis up to that time.
And August 3rd in Memphis, that had to be brutal.
Yep.
The weather could have been
the heat, yeah.
So that doesn't last long, because on August 17th of 59, back at Russwood Park, this time Monroe as champion, giving Wicks a return match at the title. Rocky Marciano, special referee to keep things in order. This is the 7th time Monroe and Wicks main event Memphis in 10 weeks. The TV show is hot. The program's hot. They drew 13,749 as an official count, but angry fans outside the stadium wanted inside, and thousands of fans battered down sections of the outfield fence to get into the stadium. Police estimated there were over 17,000 people in the ballpark before the main event ever started. Accounts in the paper say it was utter chaos, with the stands and every inch of the ballpark full of screaming, wild people. All the event officials gave up trying to charge people for admission and just let the card go on to avoid a full-scale catastrophe and riot.
What an unbelievable event. I mean, you got thousands of people that are willing to break the law and break down a fence and bum rush the stadium because they want to see this wrestling match. I mean, that is huge.
So Jim Cornette's new book, Heroes and Friends, he's got a story about this in his new book, and he says the gate with 2025 money is probably $250,000 just in the fans that paid, not necessarily the fans that didn't pay.
Right.
But they probably made in today's money about $250,000 off this show. So Monroe and Wicks each had a fall in the match. A friend of Monroe, Chico Cortez, attempts to interfere in the match. Marciano knocks out Cortez and Sputnik, calling the match a no decision. Sputnik went into a 3-week program with Spider Galento, and that program led to another Rustwood Park event with Sputnik winning in a cage match with 7,000 people attending. And then in an 8th main event on September 21st, Sputnik and Wicks went at it again, with Wicks losing his cool and getting DQ'd for slugging the referee in the 3rd fall.
And how many people do you have to attend?
7. No, I don't have an attendance for the 8th main event they did.
I mean, Sputnik is Mr. Memphis at this point.
Yeah, so this gets him in a little bit of trouble. So on September 29th, 1959, the Tennessee State Wrestling Champion, Sputnik Monroe, decides he's going to make the papers big again. He's going to go down where this guy named Gene Barry, he was in War of the Worlds, and he's in this hot television show right now, Bat Masterson. He's the sheriff of Dodge City, which is Sputnik's hometown, by the way. So Sputnik thinks, if I go down to the fair and I knock out the sheriff of Dodge City, that makes me the toughest man in Dodge City. And that's going to get me a lot of paper and media coverage. So Sputnik didn't think this all the way through, right?
No,
So Barry has got surrounded by security. There's no way Sputnik's going to get within 10 feet of the guy. And this story's been told by so many people, it's hard to really figure out.
That's Barry right there.
Bat Masterson right there.
That's who he's going down the knockout.
Yeah,
but that had to be one of my favorite TV shows back in the day too.
Sputnik wanted to knock him out,
but he can't get near.
This is insane. I mean, this is so not thought through.
So he can't get close to the guy at all. And like I said, it's been told so many times, it's hard to know exactly what happened. Sputnik always claimed that he insulted the guy's horse. But Sputnik and Kid Marley, there's a cowboy down there named Kid Marley. They end up pushing each other around, pushing their faces around or whatever. And Marley nails Sputnik with a punch that lands Monroe in the dirt. Sputnik's inebriated and drunk. He gets up about 8 times, lands on his ass about 8 times, keeps getting knocked down, loudly complaining he was sucker punched and slipped in cow poop.
8 times sucker punched.
Yeah.
That's right. He was sucker punched all 8 times.
And he slipped 8 times in cow poop. Other people that were there at the time, the eyewitnesses there, they'd say he was just thoroughly drunk. And inebriated. So anyway, he did hit the papers. And it carried the story the next morning with Sputnik all battered and bruised with the Tennessee title around his waist.
And, yeah, that's right. He had the Tennessee title on. He was going to knock out Gene Barry with the Tennessee title on.
Yeah, and so he got knocked out with the Tennessee title on and landed in mud 8 times. So Buddy is pissed. I mean, he is hot and mad. This is going to derail everything. So he decides, I'll get this cowboy to come down to fight Monroe in the ring, and I'm going to give him a payoff for it. So he calls up the guy and tells him, I'll give you $1,000 to come down. That would be about $11,000 in today's money. But $1,000 if you'll come down and fight Monroe at Ellis Auditorium. Cowboy says no. He raises it to $1,500 and schedules the match and advertises the match that the cowboy and the Sputnik are going to have a match. And he never shows up. And so about 2 people out of 5,000 ask for their money back when there's no match that they advertise, when the cowboy didn't show up, but Sputnik did.
What'd they put on in the place?
Sputnik beat a fan from the crowd. So it was one of those from the crowd. They ran that gimmick.
What now? Listen, Akbar told me this story a million times. Now I don't know if it's true or not because Akbar told me he knew Sputnik well, but he said the cowboy got cold feet because he thought he'd been set up.
Yeah,
So the cowboy thought, "Hey, they're setting me up. They're going to beat my ass down there, and it's going to be really bad on me." So
yeah.
the cowboy's thinking, "There's no way I knocked this guy out legitimate. He was pretending to be drunk or whatever it was. Yeah, I'm being set up. He's going to kill me." And so that's why the cowboy backed out because he thought the whole thing was a plot.
So yeah, exactly. So going into October, Sputnik has appeared in 44 out of 52 weekly shows, main evented 28 of them, and drew two of the largest wrestling crowds in Memphis history.
Does Gene Barry ever know how close he was to getting knocked out by Sputnik?
I don't know. I don't know if he does or not.
That's one of the dumbest things ever, but that's why I love Sputnik. He's my favorite person in the world now. I'm gonna go knock out Gene Barry.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
So as
and then get in an argument with a horse, and some cowboy's going to knock me out in a bunch of cow shit while I'm wearing the title.
So, as unbelievable as it may sound, as hot as this is, WMC cancels the wrestling show. So they cancel the Roy Welch show, and they put on syndicated Texas wrestling show instead.
Ooh.
So then, November the 7th, 1959, Buddy Fuller moves over to station WHBQ, Channel 13, an ABC affiliate, and he debuted a brand new studio show over on WHBQ and hired a brand new host because Big Jack Eaton works for WMC, and the brand new host is a fellow by the name of Lance Russell. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of smart because WHBQ had been a Dumont Network affiliate, and the Welches were famous for that. They put their wrestling show on the television station that wrestling fans were used to watching wrestling on. So they tried to get on the Dumont station that had wrestling before any chance they could. So WHBQ is a perfect fit, and it stays on there for 18 years. Lance Russell starts hosting it there in November of 1959. He adds Dave Brown to the show in 1966, and they're on there for 18 years until the Jarrett and Nick Gula split.
Wow.
Now, what happens to Sputnik? Well, he still stays there in Memphis 1960. Obviously, the deal at the Mid-South Fair cooled him off some, and he's not in Buddy's good graces. But he still main events a few matches in 1960. He switched in babyface with the tag team of the Corsica brothers, Joe and Gene.
You get your ass beat, though. You're babyface now. So.
and they eventually even teamed up a couple times with Billy Wicks. But they eventually turn on each other, and Sputnik beat Wicks for the Tennessee title March 28th of 1960. And so on April 11th, Wicks won it back with Strangler Lewis. And by the way, Buddy got the Tennessee title off of Sputnik like in 4 days after that Mid-South Fair.
Wow, what a disaster. The whole thing was if he just hadn't got drunk, it wouldn't have been an issue. That's what it was, right? I mean, he just got drunk and got...
And when Sputnik got drunk, he was clumsy drunk, too.
1961, Buddy Fuller promotes a big match as a sellout. Lester Welch against Pat O'Connor for the world title. Jackie Farrago is now single. He gets a world championship shot. And let's see.
How old was Strangler Lewis at the time?
He would have been, up close to the time he passed.
He passed in like 69, I think it was, 68 or
something
69.
like that, yeah.
I saw him right before he passed. I got to meet him right before he passed.
Did you like him?
I loved him, but he was at Strangler Lewis. I mean,
of course,
he was in a convalescent home in Oklahoma, in McAlester, Oklahoma. Hodge and a referee by the name of Jack Gott were real good friends with Strangler, and so they asked. We're going to a town. You asked if we go a little bit early, we'll meet Strangler Lewis. Please.
And by the way, in 1961, Sputnik had a hit in Memphis called Sputnik Hires a Band, which I sent you guys.
That's the worst record I've ever heard in my life.
So he starts out with a full band, and he ends up firing them all the way down to the horn player.
There's your picture of Strangler Lewis, but he was born in 1891, Jerry. So you figure out 9 extra years to what year was this? This was in the 60s. So he was 61.
Late.
His late 60s, and he passed away in 66, it says.
Yeah, so this was 4 years before he passed, 5 years
Yeah.
before he passed away. So Sputnik ends up going back, and he actually goes back to the Gulf Coast territory there in like 1963, 64. And his wife, Midge Bell, becomes the local promoter for Layfield in the Mobile office, and they promote Alexandria, Louisiana.
Hey, Jerry, I don't mean to cut you off right quick, Tony, but
Yeah, go
Stranger
ahead.
Lewis, Jerry. So you went and visited him, right?
Yeah, I went to visit me and Hodge, and Jack was in the business. I was doing a job of setting up the rings. I was on ring crew and I was still in school. So it had to be around 66, 65. He was near death when we saw him. I think he died like maybe 6 months later. But like I said, Danny Hodge was real good friends with him. And Jack Gott, the referee, was one of those old time shooter guys, one of Leroy's handyman or
Who was the referee?
manipulators. Jack Gott was the manipulator,
Yeah.
and he turned referee too. He refereed and booked, and so he was over in McAllister. We were going to some spot show where I was setting up the ring, and they asked me if I wanted to go along and meet Ed Stranger Lewis. Of course. So,
What
but
what you talk to him about?
I just, they did most of the talking. I was just sitting there and all, but most of just listened to the stories, the old wrestling stories. He was still kind of where fluent, where he didn't have dementia or anything like that. He was just old and couldn't hardly breathe. I just remember, man, that guy looked terrible.
He was not the best person to himself at all.
Yeah, was he? I didn't know that. I didn't know
Yeah.
much about it.
Well, he toured with Thez there for a long time as kind of Thez's manager.
His mentor, yeah.
And, they paid Thez 10%, and then they paid Strangler 3%. So he got 3%.
That's where that extra 3%, when he passed away, that 3% started going to the
office.
NWA, yeah.
Right. And so he traveled with Thez. He stayed in the best hotels, had the best drinks and the best food. And I think Ed took
And the
advantage
best
of
suits.
the best suit. Yeah, I mean, he was a charismatic party guy.
He was one of those guys, if you want to be a champion, you got to look like a champion. And who looked like a champion everywhere he went.
But he did eat a lot, and he didn't drink a lot.
Yeah.
And so over the years, it just took its toll on him, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So so Sputnik ends up in Louisiana, and his wife ends up as a promoter for
Midge was his wife, right? Was Midge a worker too?
I don't think so. No, I don't think she was.
Because I remember meeting her. I didn't recall her work.
That other female promoter I was trying to think of was Mrs. Jimmy Kilshaw in Louisiana, and also the lady in New Orleans. I can't think of her name right now, but Louisiana had 3 or 4 female promoters in towns. That some of them predated Eileen LaBelle.
And so Sputnik, when he goes down, does he have the success anywhere close down there?
Well, he's a draw, for the rest of his career. I mean, he worked all the way up to 1979 or 80.
When did you meet him, John? What year was it you met him?
94, I believe. I believe it was 94, 93. I believe it could have been 90. I don't 94. Somewhere in the range, 93 to 95. His son was trying to get in the business, and so Sputnik and his son hopped in with me for like a week or something like that. Rode with me.
But in the 60s, he worked a lot of tag team. So he had his brothers Jet Monroe and Rocket Monroe.
Well, Johnny had a black partner too. So
Norvell Austin.
Monroe. Norvell Austin was his partner, and named him Monroe.
And Norvell Austin put the white streak in his hair.
Yeah.
You can find a picture of them together.
I saw one when I was looking through it. Yeah.
Yeah. Norvell put the white streak in his hair. There's a little epilogue on Billy Wicks. He didn't last too long after this. I mean, he was working the Tennessee territory. He's working the Gulf Coast territory. So he was working Memphis Monday, Pensacola Tuesday, Mobile, Alabama Wednesday, Panama City Thursday, Jonesboro, Arkansas Saturday, Birmingham sometimes. And so television tapings and all of that really burned him out. And so he retired in October of 1960. and joined the Shelby County Sheriff's Department as a deputy sheriff there in Memphis, and spent most of the rest of his life.
And also became one of their physical instructors to instruct them how to defend herself, and also
Really?
was a precursor, one of the early coaches. And also Jake Shannon, our friend Jake Shannon, we've had on our show, MMA specialist, trained with Billy Robinson. Jake went and studied under Wicks there in
Really?
Tennessee.
Yep. Josh Barnett, Jake Shannon,
Josh
Eric
Barnett,
Paulson, they all worked with Billy Wicks on the MMA stuff.
So Shelby County is where we have our charity, Memphis Center City Rugby. So I know the area very well, just South Memphis. And here's the
there's the Monroe brothers.
the Monroe brothers.
Yep.
That was before the Dudley brothers, right there.
That's right, before the Dudley brothers, the Monroe brothers. That's right.
And that's the famous Sputnik pose.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so Billy Wicks, after that big run in '59, the following October, he quit the business and joined the sheriff's department, became a trainer for the police cops, and really emphasized how to handle somebody and all of that. And he did that for the rest of his life, and then got into training the MMA guys.
And catch wrestling the rest of his life.
Yep. And nickname was Pops. All the guys called him Pops because he was the father of that kind of training.
It's kind of unusual, a guy that popular to walk away and not come back, to go in.
Just totally walk away too, Don.
Yeah. I mean, I understand you're doing what you love, you're training your style that you love so much, but still, it's kind of tempting not to say, hey, you want to come make some money down in wherever today, and it's kind of tempting not to do.
Yeah, I guess essentially the road schedule was what the downside to it. He just didn't figure the money was worth all that weekly traveling. I mean, you're going from Nashville to Birmingham to Chattanooga to Mobile, Alabama to Pensacola, Florida. I mean, he was doing both territories.
And what year are we talking about there, too, Tom?
1960.
60. So wrestling a business at that time was kind of struggling too, I believe, in the 60s, early 60s.
Yeah. It's about to hit another resurgence, though. I mean, Memphis is on fire, just itself, and the Gulf Coast is on fire. But wrestling as a whole, it was struggling.
Yeah. Well, Tony, we're about 2 hours or so in, and we've kind of got, I think, a cutoff time with Sputnik here. Is that right?
Yep. Well, that's it for today.
Awesome. What a great show.
Coming up next on episode number 5, we're going to talk more about Memphis. Jerry Jarrett comes into the wrestling business. Roy Welch is going to be his mentor. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk about the Von Brauners. We're going to talk about the Infernos and J.C. Dykes. We're going to talk about the Goldens family a little bit. And we're going to talk about Roy, his first stages of dementia. So
awesome. Episode 5 coming up.